Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страны.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 895 of the news. And it's good to see you all once again. And today's been an absolutely crazy day. Ukraine has invaded Russia in the Kursk region, and also Israel is preparing a preemptive strike on Iran coming up in the next few days. It's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours, actually the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and also news from around the world, including the Middle East tonight, as we've been getting major developments and news from every single corner of the world over the past 48 hours. The biggest and most important piece of breaking news is that Ukrainian armed forces, not the Free Russian Army, not the Freedom of the Russia Legion, not the Russian Volunteer Corps, the Ukrainian army itself has marched across the border into the Russian Federation and is currently occupying the town of Sudza, about 2 miles inside of the Russian Federation, and heavy fighting has been occurring in this area for around 16 hours at this point. Heavy losses have been recorded by the Russian Federation. We have seen a few losses on the Ukrainian side as well, but it appears that the Russians were taken completely off guard and a large amount of their forces have been overwhelmed and many have surrendered, and we've seen a decent amount of vehicular losses, including the loss of 2 incredibly expensive and very rare Ka-52 attack helicopters, which were lost in the opening hours of the battle. We were also able to get major news that a large explosion has occurred nearby to a nuclear power plant just outside of Kursk to the west, near to the small town of Kurchatov. We will be covering that a little bit later. We have not been able to get any clear evidence or information about that further than what we have at the moment, and so we're going to be, of course, talking about that and speaking about the hypotheticals that could be coming out of that explosion, depending on where exactly that was around Kurchatov. Meanwhile, the purge inside the Russian Federation's government continues as 3 more high officials of the Russian Ministry of Defense have been arrested today on charges of corruption. And it appears that the Russian Federation is once again beginning to expand its purge on into the remainder of the Russian Federation's Ministry of Defense that has not been removed so far. Down in the area of southern Russia, we've also been able to get a load of pictures, an insane amount of pictures, showing the damage at Morozovsk Air Base. And the damage has been Absolutely unbelievable. Insane, as a matter of fact, as it appears that the Russian Federation lost several airframes and also an entire ammunition depot at Morozovsk, which we have pictures and news of tonight. We also have news and reports of multiple explosions happening inside of Crimea. Meanwhile, down in the Middle East, in an entirely different area of the world, we are hearing that the Iranians have issued NOTAMs over specific areas of Iraq, possibly showing that there will be some sort of rocket or missile attacks coming from those areas in the very near future. We've also started to hear that the Iranians are conducting quote-unquote war games with their rocket forces within Western Iran, most likely some sort of a cover-up to get ready for the actual attack that they'll be conducting on Israel. We also got to see that, as well, a large amount of FA-18 Hornets have arrived in the Middle East, and U.S. assets such as F-22s are transiting right now from the United Kingdom into the Middle East at the moment to continue to bolster U.S. forces that are in the area and to prepare for the upcoming Iranian attack. We have an insanely high amount of news tonight, a lot of it, and stuff that would be considered unbelievable for the most part, considering that the Russian Federation is actually being invaded for the first time ever by the armed forces of Ukraine. And that brings us to our major news of the night, which takes us right to Sudza within the western region of the Kursk Oblast of the Russian Federation. At the very break of dawn this morning, we started to see that there was a heavy amount of shelling that started to occur in the area around Sudza. This drone is a Ukrainian drone that is looking from the border south and a little bit towards the east, in between the area of the border, and I'll be showing y'all exactly where this is, the border crossing of Gogolevka right here, and then looking over towards the area of Goncharovka, which is a suburb of the town of Sudza. From what we can tell, a heavy artillery barrage started to occur as we saw smoke rising from multiple different areas around Sudza, and it appeared to have been a preparatory advance for the force that was going to cross thereafter. What is really interesting about the force that started to cross afterwards is that initially we had reports that it was most likely the Free Russian Army, made up of Russian citizens that were invading the Russian Federation in an attempt to liberate it from the Putin regime, which is usually what has been done so far in the past. But for the first time ever, this is truly the first time ever that we've ever seen this, it is not the Free Russian Army invading the Russian Federation, it is actually the Ukrainians themselves who have launched this ground offensive and are now starting to advance into the town of Sudza in the early hours of this morning. We were then able to see not long afterwards that a large amount of strikers were seen on the move through the Russian Federation, which was also something incredibly interesting, as in the past, we were told that the Free Russian Army, or the Russian Liberation Army, whatever you want to call it, was not allowed by the United States to use Western weaponry. And while we did see it here and there, for example, some Humvees and other things like that, we never truly saw a wide variety of Western vehicles within the Free Russian Army. And this is once again leading us to believe that this is entirely a Ukrainian-based force. And we can see here...
And also the footage we're watching right here is actually the Ukrainian military moving into the Kursk region.
Yes, that is correct.
That is insane. Like you were mentioning a moment ago, we've seen the Freedom of Russia Legion go in there before. But now to see the actual Ukrainians doing it, that's a whole different animal. Because I thought they sent in the Freedom of Russia Legion to make it look like, it's really not Ukraine really doing it themselves. It's more of like a proxy group, kind of like Iran does in the Middle East, trying to basically prevent things from escalating too much. But this time they're going in, so that's crazy.
And it is very crazy. It's also really interesting because our initial reports in the morning, and I was talking about this a lot in the short war video that we put out today, was showing a very interesting picture, one that we rarely ever see, but it was one that was very interesting because not long after these strikers started to cross the border, we immediately got reports flooding in that 2 Ka-52 attack helicopters had been shot down. And this was probably one of the largest developments that we had heard up to this point when the advance was occurring. And let me make sure that I can go find the Ka-52. And so let me scroll down here and let me go find it. So this is a Ka-52. Many people haven't seen this helicopter in a very long time in the war. That is why we are showing it right now, to once again remind everyone what this helicopter looks like. It is a counter-rotating propeller helicopter, a very rare type in the world. Very few attack helicopters work off of this basis, except for the Ka-52, the Ka-50, and the Kamarov 29, which can be used as mostly a utility helicopter, but also can be used as a light attack helicopter. Nevertheless, 2 of these were shot down pretty much within the opening hours of the Ukrainian push across the border. And many people were wondering, how in the world did the Free Russian Army have that kind of available air defense to be able to shoot these helicopters down? Because in the past, we had seen that the Free Russian Army really didn't have a lot of air defense to speak of, maybe some manpads, but nothing that was incredibly potent or incredibly dangerous and could end up shooting down even lower flying helicopters like the Ka-52 while they were in flight. But today we did get to hear that 2 of them were shot down, and we were able to get video and picture evidence of one of them that was shot down right here. And it clearly is showing wherever this went. So let me see if I can press that again, and it pulls up the right one. There we go. So this is the Ka-52 that was shot down. We can actually see that it apparently was at a very low altitude and in a fairly slow speed, because it seems to have belly flopped onto the ground. The fuselage largely remained intact, but a fire has broken out near to the engines at the rear of the helicopter, and it does seem as though that this was a complete loss. We also got reports that there was a second helicopter that was shot down, but we never got to see the picture and video evidence of the second Ka-52 that was shot down. But considering that they were able to validify the first loss of a Ka-52 near to the area of Sudza, we are going to assume at this moment, considering that it's a Ukrainian government report, that a second Ka-52 was lost in the area. It's just that we do not have the video and picture evidence to give complete corroboration of that story at this moment. Meanwhile, we also got to see, interestingly enough, that the Russians immediately started to try and move in some surge forces to help out the small garrison that was around the town of Sudza and was completely getting overrun pretty much within the opening few hours of the push. Apparently, from what we can see, 2 main battle tanks of the Russian Federation were destroyed in transit to the front line just a few hours into the invasion. We can see this right here. 2 T-72B3s, which are actually fairly advanced, especially compared to what we're seeing on the front line of Ukraine, completely lost and obliterated while they were trying to move down towards the area. We can also see that they geolocated us to a specific area nearby, but still, this is a major development, once again showing that the Russian Federation apparently was caught completely off guard by this push, because they didn't have any additional reinforcements in the area leading up to the Ukrainian offensive, and their surge forces appeared to have been taking very significant losses very quickly. Considering that they were trying to move in and had pretty much been taken off guard, their communication was dated, and so they started to drive into very clear zones of danger, and they started to take very considerable losses because of that. Moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a very interesting vehicle being used by the Ukrainians. This is an M1132 engineering vehicle. It is built on a Stryker APC, but it is a lighter engineering vehicle that is used by the Ukrainian armed forces to be able to clear a path for their Stryker APCs and such things like that they're moving in. And it seems as though that this force is way better equipped than the Free Russian Army ever was. To kind of give us a breakdown here of what we have seen so far out of this unit, I'm assuming that this is some sort of a battalion-sized element. It may even be a little bit larger than a battalion. It may even be closer to a brigade-sized element that we're seeing at this moment. But let's break down what we have seen so far, and then maybe we can try and ascertain the actual size of this force. So far, we have seen that their anti-aircraft abilities have been fairly competent and have ended up shooting down several helicopters. And we've also gotten an iffy report that there may have been a plane that was shot at today and ended up sustaining some pretty serious damage. We're not entirely sure about that report, so we're throwing that one aside. So we know that the 2 helicopters were shot down, which is showing that they have somewhat strong AA. So we were assuming that either they have some sort of self-propelled anti-aircraft guns, like Gepards, or maybe some other system like Estrella, which is traveling along with them into Sudza, or they have an incredibly large amount of manpads that were put forward in front of the force for the large part as they were advancing and were attempting to create some sort of an air cover screen against Russian attacks. But apparently they have a large amount of them because they were able to catch both of the Ka-52s completely off guard and inflict incredibly high losses onto the Russian rotary wing aviation that was in the area. Another thing that we're seeing is that they were all equipped, from what we can tell, with American equipment, like the Stryker APC, Humvees, MRAPs, and Max Pros. We have not seen any armor so far in the form of tanks, and so we are assuming that this is mostly a mechanized or motorized force that has advanced into the area, suggesting that it is most likely a medium or light combined arms brigade sort of a build, or a combined arms battalion sort of a build. We don't know we can't really ascertain an exact size yet. I'm actually more so leaning towards the combined arms battalion sized element instead of a brigade, because a brigade would be about 3,000 to 5,000 strong, and we haven't really seen the kind of depth of the offensive and also the sheer numbers in the offensive to be able to confirm that it is a brigade. So going off of those things, the large amount of air defense and also the large amount of APCs, there's another interesting thing that we can go off of as well, which is the amount of artillery that the Ukrainians were using in this area around Sudza. We could see in this picture right here that they apparently had a large amount of artillery support before they even conducted this advance, and these artillery strikes were most likely trying to target Russian border guard outposts and checkpoints in the area to try and knock them out or heavily disorganize them for the Ukrainian push that was coming. That is also once again indicating that the Ukrainian armed forces was pretty well integrated with some artillery forces that had conducted this advance, and that is showing that not only do they have anti-air artillery of some sort, and also conventional artillery of some form of self-propelled or towed artillery piece, or maybe even heavy mortars, they also have a decent amount of APCs as well. And so going off of this picture, we can tell without a doubt that this is most likely some form of a mechanized brigade or a mechanized combined arms battalion that is currently conducting the advance into Sudza. This gives us a really good idea of what the Ukrainians are probably going to be planning into the future. At the moment, considering that this is most likely a medium combined arms battalion, we are expecting that their advance will not be that deep, at least initially, as a battalion can only hold so much ground before they start to stretch themselves incredibly thin, and by capturing Sudza, we believe that they will most likely have achieved their primary objective and will then begin to hold their ground and wait for a Russian counterattack that will eventually start to happen. Another thing that's also interesting about this is that the Ukrainians really have equipped this unit. We don't know what brigade is currently conducting this action at the moment, or what battalion within a brigade is conducting the action, but they are very well put together. They have entirely Western equipment from what we can tell, at least based off of the drone footage that the Russians showed. So this is giving us a really good idea that this is supposed to be a cream of the crop unit that might be able to slug it out with the Russians for some time. And now, with that being said about them slugging it out for some time, now it's time for us to talk about what are the Ukrainians doing in Sudza. They are most likely trying to conduct some sort of a diversion for the Russian armed forces. Now, this is something that I came up with because we're looking at the composition of the unit, the size of the unit, and most likely their supposed objectives, which is currently to advance onto the town of Sudza, capture the town, and then hold it until Russian resistance begins to appear in larger numbers. This means that this is most likely some sort of a diversionary attempt by the Ukrainian armed forces to try and draw Russian strategic reserves away from other areas, maybe around the area of Vovchansk or Belgrade, as Russian forces that are currently staging in Belgrade as possible reserves and surge forces for the Russian forces still in Vovchansk may have to be moved further north and towards the area of Sudza to try and defend against this Ukrainian advance, or at least try and push them back out or create some sort of a perimeter around them. This could put the Ukrainians in a very advantageous position in a direction like Vovchansk, as if they are able to amass and coordinate enough of their armed forces in this area and conduct a rapid offensive, or a rapid or overwhelming offensive, the Russians will then be caught with a dilemma. And a dilemma is really what is the most preferred option for an armed force, because the Russians then have to decide, do we allow the Ukrainian armed forces to continue to hold Sudza and possibly dedicate even more forces to this possible offensive and then begin to advance even further into the Russian Federation, or do we try try and let Vovchansk disappear, and in an attempt to try and push the Ukrainians out of Sudza and pretty much gain nothing out of this but lose nothing in return. And so going off of all of this, this does appear to be mostly a diversionary attempt by the Ukrainian armed forces in this direction. But there's a lot more footage and information that we got that is showing that this went probably a lot more successfully than expected. Now, when the Ukrainians conducted this advance, the Ukrainians most likely were attempting to isolate and destroy the enemy in detail, which is usually a fairly common battle practice within Western battle doctrines and really even within Soviet battle doctrines that the Ukrainians and the Russians have used throughout the entirety of the war. But they did wildly well, in fact, absurdly well, with the amount of prisoners that we were able to see on video that were being taken from the Russian Federation. We can see right here that some Russians were filming before this offensive began as they were waiting for a breakthrough. Apparently, they may have gotten a heads-up notice by about an hour or two that a breakthrough was going to begin. And so we can see these Russian border guards inside of a dugout with an RPG waiting for the Ukrainians to advance onto them.
Обстановка напряженная. Ждем вертолет. Готовность.
And we see them showing the inside. We can also see some other kind of, it looks like an RPG-27 to me. It's a more modern version of an anti-tank weapon. It's kind of similar to that of a Law or an AT-4, but still very interesting to see that the Russian border guards were apparently ready and may have gotten a little bit of a heads-up notice that Ukrainian advance was coming. However, it doesn't look like that notice did them any good, because we then started to see that a large amount of Russians began to surrender very quickly into this offensive. This footage has a watermark saying that this is the Korn group, so we do not know if this unit, which we're still assuming is battalion sized, is made up of an amalgamation of companies from other brigades and other battalions that were amassed into a single task force in this area to try and conduct this offensive. We're not entirely sure, but this footage is pretty wild to see, so here's the clip. We can see the Russians right here. We can see the Ukrainians showing the trenches. We can also see someone moving around in one of them. And we now see one of the Russians coming out with his hands up and surrendering.
That's probably the smartest thing he's ever done in his life.
It probably is. I mean, like, I would have to assume it is, because this guy was like, I'm not dying. He's like, dude, I'm not dying out here. The honest truth is that if the border guards were a very small force, and we're assuming that they are, they probably were overrun. Like, the Ukrainian forces literally just ran over them and ended up encircling them. And so this is a pocket that is behind the Ukrainian active line, closer towards Sudza. And so these guys decided, considering that they're surrounded and there's no chance of reinforcement or resupply, and their unit is so small, there's really no chance of a breakout being conducted either to try and return into Russian-controlled territory. They probably made the decision that it was best to surrender. Also, really quickly, before I move on, I got to thank everyone so much for the support tonight. You all have been incredibly kind with the super chats and wanting to help keep the channel running. I want to make a quick comment about that, because it seems as though YouTube did not push our stream tonight, which is, it is what it is. We're going to run the news either way, but it's incredibly kind of y'all to want to help the channel to keep the lights on, even if there's a large amount of people here or if there isn't. So a huge thanks to y'all. Just want to make sure to say that really quickly. But getting back to the video.
And also just a quick note on that as well. Apparently, YouTube is having a glitch tonight, because sometimes we don't get pushed into people's feeds, but tonight, it was literally not pushed into anybody's feeds. So there's some type of glitch going on with YouTube's algorithm. Whatever it is, I hope they get it fixed, because tonight has been an absolute disaster when it comes to pushing the stream on anybody's accounts.
Yeah, I noticed this, Matthew. This was very interesting. Hardly anyone had come in the first 20 minutes. Like, there was like 3,000 people here, and now people are starting to flood. And I think because they're wondering, where is the update for the stream? Is it even live yet? And then they look at our channel, they see that one is live, and now everyone's getting on. But still really weird.
And also, when you go search us up on YouTube as well, I've seen some people say that even if you go and look at our like search bar tab with the Enforcer in the search bar, you don't even see the live stream on that page either. You have to go all the way to the channel's profile page, go to the live tab, and then scroll down, and then you finally see it. So it's also hidden in several different pages as well.
Yeah, this is bizarre. It's really weird. And some people are saying shadow ban. It happens sometimes. It may be the case. I wouldn't know why, but might be so. But we see more Russians surrendering here. Once again, it appears that the Ukrainians had encircled these units, and so the Russians decided to surrender. In this one clip alone, they were able to document that 35 Russians were taken prisoner, meaning that around a platoon-sized element of the Russian border guards ended up surrendering in this one location, wherever this was, in between the border and Sudza.
I think a notification just went out in Force because I'm seeing a lot of people flooding in all of a sudden out of nowhere saying they just got notified.
Yeah, I was like, oh, there it is, like 30 minutes after we went live. Not bad. I mean, YouTube might be able to shave that down to about 15 minutes after we go live sometime. Hey, but still. We see, I believe those may be Ukrainian soldiers down there. We can't really tell because it's hard to see their armbands, so we can't really tell if those were the Russians or the Ukrainians.
I feel like we should be hearing Madiar in this video. I don't know why. I'm expecting to hear him break out the car antenna any second and start banging the screen.
Oh, look at that. Boom, jaga, look at it again. And then just like the quick replay. But there was a couple of more of them that surrendered right there. But a very good thing to see. We were also able to see some additional bits of information of more Russian forces that have been captured. We don't know where their position was, but we did get to see the footage of them being hauled away down a road towards the border to be taken as prisoners by the Ukrainian armed forces, apparently towards a processing unit that is sitting a little bit behind the lines, most likely a reserve unit. But we can see them walking them along right there, the Ukrainians following them. We can't really get an exact count. I'm thinking it's around 6 or 8 guys that were in that line, but still quite an interesting amount of prisoners taken. So in this clip alone and the other, it appears that around 2 platoons total may have ended up getting captured immediately within the first hour or two of the border incursion and surrendered immediately, meaning that the Russian border guards were probably heavily depleted of manpower by the time the battle had progressed later on. And we saw that the Ukrainian forces had pretty much made it into Sudza. Meanwhile, we also got to see, and I'm trying to get make sure that we have the footage here, some footage of Sudza, which is showing that artillery fire had started to land into the town, and showing that there may be some possible battles that were already beginning to occur on the town's outskirts at this point.
You know, I know you talked about it earlier, but I'm really starting to wonder exactly what Ukraine's plan is with this whole attack and assault on the Kursk region, because if you really think about it, it's actually pretty risky, because that unit had to be, deterred from somewhere else to be put over here to go into Kursk and try to take this territory. So I get what you're saying about it being potentially a feint to draw Russians away from other positions, but even at that, if it goes badly, it could be pretty risky. If it goes good, though, the reward's going to be immense, because now the Russians have to bring people from other parts of the front line back over to Kursk to try to defend it, or they're going to have to let it go and let Ukraine have it. So it's a gamble, and hopefully I think it pays off.
Maybe it will, and there are some interesting points that you're bringing up there. One of them, though, I can give a very good answer to. They are not going to be leaving this entirely undefended. This exertion of manpower that the Ukrainians have put into this direction will require a Russian response. The Russians must always respond to a border incursion, because if they didn't, and the border guards were the only one left to try and deal with the situation, being as heavily unmanned and underpowered as they are right now, that could mean disaster for the Russians, because right now the Ukrainians have created a pretty much a state of chaos around Sudza. The border guards aren't really coordinated at the moment. They've been overrun or most likely heavily disorganized still and trying to get their act together. And the Ukrainians are currently the ones who are in control of the situation in this area, at least right now while we're talking. And so, with no Russian forces there, really no communication there, or any kind of a containment being made, the Ukrainians, in the Russians' mind, could start to slip SBU forces clean into Russia in the middle of this chaos, because there's no one around to see them slip through. There's no one even knowing where the Ukrainians really are. I mean, there's, going to be an occasional skirmish here and there in between the Ukrainian armed forces and the Russians' border guards, but there's not going to be a lot of them. And, not enough of them to see every single unit everywhere and get an idea, oh, there goes an infiltrating group from the SBU that's trying to get deeper into Russia. So they have to respond because they do not know what this could create. They could see that if the Ukrainians are unopposed, they could start to advance even deeper into the Kursk Oblast and start to cause even further issues.
But, for example, if they try to do that, and they're trying to basically create a corridor for more forces and more special forces to get through deeper into Russia, what is the objective there? Are they trying to go in and cause sabotage and destruction to hurt the Russian economy? Or is the objective to go straight to Moscow and try to take out the man at the top? Like, what is the overall, goal behind that?
The objective of an SBU team, which would be something along the lines of Ukrainian Special Forces, I'm just using SBU as the be-all, fill-all, because there's loads of Ukrainian Special Forces, just like America has multiple different special forces units that we have. The reason why they would be dropping off SBU forces would be through an older Soviet-style doctrine, which would be to conduct sabotage behind enemy lines and to help out the frontline units having an easier time, because ammunition warehouses or ammunition dumps, communication hubs, and command centers would be targeted and destroyed, or at least heavily impeded by these special forces units conducting attacks against them behind the lines in a kind of a hit-and-run style. They probably would not be sending a load of teams to go straight to Moscow and kill Putin, because that would be incredibly ambitious. And not only that, once these larger teams started to actually hit the city of Moscow, they would run into some major issues with security. There's a lot of police and a lot of FSB that are inside of Moscow, and so it would make the movement of such a large group like that really difficult to pull off, and it would require a lot of planning and also a lot of help from partisan forces within the area of Moscow. And all of that would be very, very difficult to pull off, if not impossible. Also, to be able to breach Putin's really inner circle of defense, such as at the Kremlin or any other government building inside of Russia where the security is the strongest, that would be pretty tough to pull off. And so if they were starting to conduct infiltrations of their lines with special forces, it's most likely going to be to further frontline objectives, more so than any sort of a grand strategic objective like an execution or an assassination of the leaders of the Russian Federation. But nevertheless, a lot of people have been wondering, what is the point of this attack that the Ukrainians have conducted today? The first time Ukrainian forces have actually officially ever set foot on Russian soil in the entirety of the war. What is the point of this? What are they trying to achieve from this? Are they going to try and capture a decent element of the Russian Federation, or is it just a temporary assault to try and draw the forces of Russia away from other areas like the Vovchansk direction? What is this, and what are the Ukrainians trying to achieve from it? And a lot of people have multiple different ideas and opinions about what this is and what this is going to end up being. But Matthew, what are people actually thinking about this? Do they think that it's just a temporary thing? Do they think they're trying to actually capture and hold territory? Do they think that they're heading to Washington? Like, where are they going? Like, and what are you thinking about it?
All right, so I'll be perfectly honest here. I was actually very shocked to see the Ukrainian forces going into Kursk today, because I was expecting that maybe it would be the Freedom of Russia Legion, but after we looked very close, it turns out it is definitely the Ukrainian forces going in, which is a bit of a shocker to me, as well as other people. And the big question is, does Ukraine plan on advancing into Russia even further? So 49% said no, it's just a temporary assault, while 36% said yes, Ukraine will take more border towns, including Kursk itself, and 5% said maybe Ukraine is heading to Moscow. And on this one, I'll be perfectly honest. I'm really not sure what Ukraine's plan is, but if I took an educated guess, I would assume that Ukraine's probably taking the place of the Freedom of Russia Legion, and they're going to start conducting these temporary assaults into Russia to hope to draw other units away from the front line that are the Russian forces to the spot, and then maybe retreat after they've been forced away from their first location. So I'm actually with the 49%. I think it's temporary, but of course, it could be an actual attempt to take the border town But that is a lofty goal, even with the pitiful resources the Russians have on the border. That is still pretty lofty. And of course, it is risky for the Ukrainians as well. So it's a gamble that could pay off or it could go badly. So we'll be watching this one very closely. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that this is most likely some source of a distraction that the Ukrainians are trying to make. It's very clear to me, based off of what we're seeing on the ground, this isn't a very large element of the Ukrainian army that is conducting this offensive. It is most likely some form of a mechanized battalion that is advancing towards Sudza right now. Well, actually, they're in Sudza from what we know at the moment. And so it doesn't really seem like they have any major ambitions. Because if they had a major ambition, we would be able to tell off of their force size. A lot like we knew that the Russians had really big ambitions for the Vovchansk offensive initially, because we were able to ascertain that there were multiple Russian battalion tactical groups involved. Really, as a whole, there were multiple Russian brigades that were involved in that offensive, and all of the brigades combined totaled, I believe, a division or 2 divisions of strength, about 40 to 50,000 troops. And they still did not really achieve anything at all in this direction. And from what we know, that number has now greatly dwindled, as a lot of those forces have been moved elsewhere, or they have pretty much fallen back into the city of Belgorod and are pretty much sitting back and waiting for new orders to be issued. And so going off of that, we knew that the Russian offensive had really big goals starting off. That was certainly a spearhead attempt to once again try and put Kharkiv in the crosshairs and put a lot of pressure on the Ukrainians in the war effort to try and come to some kind of a compromise with the Russian Federation, or else possibly lose the second largest city in Ukraine. However, this offensive is quite small. I mean, it's very small if we look at it. Maybe a battalion. It's not a heavy battalion either, with heavy armor inside of it like main battle tanks. It is entirely mechanized. Really, it's kind of a mix of mechanized and motorized, because they have strikers and they do have some Max Pros, but Max Pros kind of fall under the motorized category instead of the mechanized. So from what we can tell, this is a mechanized battalion with artillery and air support integrated into it, like a normal combined arms battalion would have. So going off of that, it's just not big enough of a unit to be able to hold any meaningful area or to capture a large amount of ground. And so this does seem to be a diversionary effort by the Ukrainian armed forces to try and pull Russian forces from elsewhere. So I would say that's most likely going to be a temporary assault. And not only that, the Free Russian Army has laid out a historical precedent in the past that pretty much every incursion into Russia has been some sort of a temporary incursion. They're never permanent. They will hold an area for weeks, maybe a month or two, and then they'll finally withdraw after a while and then move back across the border into safety. The Russians pretty much never follow them back across the border because they want to be able to free up those forces immediately, and instead of trying to pursue the Free Russian Army or the Ukrainian Army at this point across the border and back into Ukraine, still tying up precious, valuable resources and manpower from the Russian army. Once those forces go right back across the border, the Russians put the border guards back up on the border, and then they send the actual army units and Rosguardia that was moved into that area back where they came from, or back to a different area in Ukraine. So still, going off of that, I am assuming that this is most likely going to be temporary, while Matthew is going on a purge in the chat. I mean, my goodness, man.
And the bots are flooding in here. I'm telling you what, man. It's crazy.
Man, I'm telling you, man. Dude, that's crazy, man. I'm looking at it. It's like 7 bots in like 5 seconds. But still.
Oh, also one other thing as well. I was going to point out the fact that, you know, I've seen some bots out there and also pro-Russian propagandists saying that this attack into Kursk today shows that Ukraine is desperate. And in my opinion, I don't think that shows that whatsoever, because right now on the front lines, Ukraine's been holding their ground extremely well on the front. And Russia's been, once again, like they've been doing the entire war, they've been throwing everything they've got into a meat grinder, hoping to wear down the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians have held their ground through all of that. So they're not desperate. They're holding the ground perfectly fine. But I think they're simply getting tired of the stalemate that has basically been created because of the manpower being thrown on the Russian side and also the determination of the Ukrainians on their side. So this could be what they're trying to do to shake things up a bit, to hopefully throw the Russians off kilter, to maybe get some ground on the front line. But once again, Ukraine has, you know, retreated in some particular areas, but overall, the main part of the front line is holding steady. So I would definitely disagree. It's not out of desperation whatsoever. It's just simply trying to shake things up to get the stalemate out of the way.
And I would agree with that. I would say that it's not an act of desperation. You know what's stupid about that, Matthew, is just like, you know, everyone always says that an offensive action from Ukraine, you know, bots and things, is a desperate measure. It's like, so I guess every time anyone ever went on an offensive in a war anywhere, it was always a desperate measure, like the Normandy landings on
Yeah.
June 6th. I guess that was a desperate measure because we were losing World War II. So then we landed in France and steamrolled the Germans from June 6th to about, let's see, May 8th of the next year. I guess that was a desperate measure by America and our allies, but, you know, what do I know? I don't know anything. I just read a lot and I'm a history major, bachelor's degree. I know nothing about that stuff.
Man, I'm telling you, under that logic right there that the bots use, technically everything in the war is a desperate move because Ukraine's fighting for their homeland. So it's like, obviously they're desperate to protect their land. It's like, but that's not a fair, like, you know, critique or criticism, or that's not actually what's happening right here. It's simply a way to shake things up. Because there is a stalemate here. And Russia keeps pulling people off the streets. Literally, just random guys, they put them in vans, bring them out to the training center, give them like a week or two of training, and then throw them on the front lines. And how can Ukraine keep up with that? You know, with them keep doing that over and over and over throughout the weeks? They have to find a way to change the battlefield situation, or otherwise they're never going to gain any ground, and it's going to turn into a frozen conflict permanently over several years. And I think this is the way they're trying to break it up.
I think this is, and they will probably be able to start messing around with the Russians' a strategic reserve pretty well doing this kind of stuff, especially if the Russians are slow to respond. They might be able to expand this even further, maybe even throw in a couple of other battalions into this operation, and then be able to make sure that the Russians are really having to fight against a dug-in Ukrainian force that may have occupied even a larger amount of territory within the Kursk Oblast. But moving back into more information and clips that we were able to get from this area, we were able to see, and let me make sure, that there was a report of a possible border incursion that was confirmed to be an actual border incursion. But the most important thing here is that the Ukrainians, once again, like I was trying to say earlier, do appear to be a mechanized force, or at least this element might actually be a motorized infantry company attached to the mechanized battalion. But we can see here that the Ukrainians are using a new offensive marking on their vehicles, a hollow triangle. We've never seen this offensive marking before, used by the RDK, or the Freedom of Russia Legion, which make up the Russian Liberation Army, or the Free Russian Army. We've never seen this emblem used by them before. They actually use the conventional Ukrainian White Cross. And so this is a very interesting thing. Possibly, once again, an element of deception. There's actually two ways that this could go. This is a possible attempt at deception, making the Russians believe, because this has a new offensive marking, that this may even be a forward unit of an even larger offensive that is still waiting across the border in the Sumy Oblast, considering that the Ukrainians gave enough time to designate a new offensive theater marking for these forces. Or it may be an attempt at deception, trying to make the Russians believe that there's probably a larger force behind these guys, and so they need to start sending strategic reserves into this area immediately and try and push them back across before a larger force can arrive and begin to steamroll through this area of the Kursk Oblast. We also were able to get a little bit more information, and let me make sure I have to go through all of these clips because there is a lot of them. We were able to hear, and I want to show you this, that one Ukrainian APC was already lost. We usually never show Ukrainian losses on the channel, generally because we have Ukrainian soldiers watching or people who have family members that are in the Ukrainian armed forces. But considering that this is an ongoing offensive, we did want to give as clear a picture as we possibly could. This is the only, and I would like to make that very clear, this is the only Ukrainian vehicle that we've seen lost so far in the offensive, which appears to be some sort of a striker, perhaps. But we can see it getting hit right there. It's hit on its left side. This watermark is distracting as hell, dude. Like, my lord, they couldn't have made it
It's
more
like
distracting.
you know, like those gas stations that have that like spinning sign. It's like that in a logo form.
Dude, what does it say? It says, wait a minute, Vra Maiora. I don't know what the hell that means. If someone could translate that, I'd be appreciative. But we can see the vehicle has been hit. It's smoking, but it appears that the vehicle did not catch on fire and burn out, at least from what the Russians showed us, but we would assume that the vehicle has been disabled. It also looks to be a Max Pro, like you can tell by the front. It looks to be a Max Pro. So the hit may have even been superficial. We don't really know for certain, but we are going to assume that this vehicle has been disabled and possibly knocked out. It probably was a vehicle, once again, that was attached to a motorized company of this combined arms mechanized battalion. So going off of that, this is probably not that serious of a loss. Usually motorized companies have a fairly large amount of these kinds of vehicles. Usually, I believe it's around if I'm correct, and I'm trying to think here really quickly, it's maybe 10 to 20 of these vehicles per company. So if they have 2 or 3 motorized companies, this is a fairly insignificant loss, at least as a standalone. So it's not going to be posing that much of a risk to the Ukrainian armed forces and their offensive objectives, at least within the area south of Sudza, where we believe that loss may have been taken. We also got to hear of this video as well. This video was taken near to the front lines by a Russian. It appears that the Ukrainians had hit a Russian military vehicle further up the road with artillery, and meanwhile, we also got to see some Russian Su-25s going into absolute panic trying to get to the front line. So here's the clip, all captured from this guy's dashboard.
Damn, man, it's like out of a movie or something.
Yeah! Oh yeah, and there was this. Some mortar fire. But that's the end of the clip. It's showing that chaos is starting to unfold within the pretty much entirety of this region of the Kursk Oblast. It looks, like Matthew said, like a movie, which is the most bizarre thing about this. But still, what's probably the most interesting thing is that this is actually not that far from a really concerning sight. And let me move you all a little bit deeper into the Kursk Oblast and near to the city of Kursk, right over here at the small town of Kurchatov. Kurchatov is a little itty-bitty town. It's a lot like another one that many of y'all would know from Ukraine. And I'm actually going to go show it to y'all because many of y'all will know it when I say it. Enerhodar. Enerhodar is a town that was built during the times of the Soviet Union to support and provide a workforce for the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant and also the Zaporizhia thermal power plant, which were both built in the same area. The town inside of Kursk that I'm speaking of, and I gotta go get back to it, of Kurchatov, is a lot like that, because just north of Kurchatov is the Rostov nuclear power plant, which has 2 operational nuclear reactors that are, at all times, providing electricity to the surrounding power grid. We do not know what has happened at this facility or at the specific site. The only thing that we can confirm is that explosions appear to have happened incredibly close to the nuclear power plant within a very short time frame right before the stream, about an hour or 2 before we went live, and it appears that there may have been somewhat possible significant or moderate damage, because we are hearing that Russian propagandists and locals are going insane on Telegram talking about the Ukrainians have a nuclear weapon. Apparently they're misconstruing a possible hit on a power plant with a nuclear weapon. But nevertheless, we do have 2 clips of it, and I want to say this. We do not know exactly what's happened. We don't even know if the power plant's been hit, but based off of Russian telegrams, something bizarre has happened in this area with this explosion. We don't know if this was from the Russians. We don't know if this was from the Ukrainians. All we can say is there was an explosion very close to a nuclear power plant, and that's all that we have at the moment. And moving on.
Why do I taste metal?
You don't taste metal. There's no graphite on the roof. But also, here's a second clip of the explosion as well. It was strong. Whatever this was, it was an incredibly strong explosion. Because you could see it even shook this mounted camera for a brief moment when the shockwave hit it, like right here.
Very strong.
So we do not know what this was. We don't really know exactly where this was around Kurchatov either. Some have said that this was, like this title, near the Kursk Nuclear Powerplant, which is just north of Kurchatov, near the area of Roslovo. So we do not know if this hit was a dead-on hit, but it could have been. And of course, the consequences of a dead-on hit near to the area of a nuclear power plant could be pretty severe, depending on what it hit. But we don't know what it hit. We haven't heard of any real damage so far from the Russian authorities, which we would expect. They usually underplay everything, even if it is a major incident. So at the moment, all we know is that there's been a heavy explosion near to the area of Kurchatov, and that is it. But regardless of that, regardless of what has happened at that power plant, we do know that that little Ukrainian offensive down near Sudza is creating chaos. Chaos that the Russians just cannot afford at this moment. Really, no side in the war can afford additional chaos beyond what they have planned or predicted. And from what we can tell, the Russian government has decided that there are some people who may have been involved in creating a little bit too much chaos, and they're deciding to start and arrest more people. We have heard that 3 more top officials in the Russian Ministry of Defense have been arrested just today, and apparently Putin is attempting to stem the massive looting of Russia's defense sector. I would have to tell you.
Oh wait, is he gonna arrest himself first though? It's like he's the guy at the top. He's like the chief mafia leader, the one that steals the most. It's literally like Russia's bank is like his piggy bank. He has the yachts. He's got everything. He's got everything he could ever want. It's like, how do you get that from being the president of Russia? Unless you're stealing everything.
Well, you know, Matthew, the thing is that Putin's corruption is fine because he's the leader, but if your corruption is not in line with corruption that benefits him, then it's not okay. And apparently these guys crossed that line. They went from good corruption to bad corruption, and now they're going to arrest them and charge them with corruption like many other Russian officials gone before, like Ivan Popov, among many others, who have been arrested over the course...
To me, it's really like code. When they say they're arresting somebody for corruption, it's code words for they went against Putin's will, and now we're going to stage a prosecution to lock them away. For some reason, though, they typically will throw people out of windows if you go against Putin's will. But for some reason, with some of these people, they decide to let them have a pass and go to prison instead and get prosecuted. I'm not sure how he decides between, offing people or putting them in prison, but for some reason they were spared.
Well, you know what's interesting, Matthew? Everyone who's ever been arrested and tried, they've all been in the military, and everyone who's been thrown out of a window is in the civilian sector.
Oh, that is a good point. That is a good point. I wonder why. I wonder if it's because the civilian sector has a lot more money and influence than the military people. Because the military people are powerful because Putin gave them a position, but the private sector people are powerful because they literally have built their own money and influence. So I wonder if that's the difference.
Yeah, I wonder. I think that might actually be the difference. I think we're on to something, Matthew. Like if you're an oligarch in Russia, death is going to be very sudden. If you're in the military in Russia, you will not die. You will just go to prison and not pass go and not collect 200. Unless if you sell like some Russian military uniforms and declare them as airsoft uniforms, then you might get 200. But beyond that, no money for you. But still, very interesting to hear that they're arresting 3 more top officials of the Russian Ministry of Defense. And this is once again showing us that the purge is continuing. Apparently, the corruption is getting a little bit out of bounds of what Putin finds to be acceptable or beneficial corruption. And so now they're going to bring their foot down on a couple of more people. But there is something else that we have heard very interestingly today, and I didn't put this on the map because we have loads of news to cover, and we still haven't gotten to a large amount of the rest of our news, and we're already an hour in. It looks like everyone's finally joined us, though, Matthew, as we're up to about 8.5 thousand live viewers, so I'm guessing that everyone just eventually found out we were live and got on, even with YouTube hardly pushing us or not pushing us at all, from what I could tell. But beyond that, we have heard that apparently Shoigu has apparently visited Iran and returned really recently to the Russian Federation. And from what we have heard, apparently several Russian cargo planes landed after Shoigu left. Apparently with presents, maybe gifts. We're not entirely sure what the contents of the aircraft were, but we do know one thing. They were pretty standard looking Ilyushin 76s of the Russian Air Force, like these right here. So this is making us believe that this may have been weapon shipments to Iran, possibly trying to prepare them for the actions to follow in the Middle East, and hopefully try and create a lot of chaos down there to distract the Western forces from their interests within Eastern Europe. But a lot of people have been talking about this, and a lot of people have been throwing in the idea that this may actually be a Russian arms shipment to Iran, a full-on material support of the Iranians in this upcoming conflict, this heroic struggle against the evil, wicked forces of the West, believe it. Some people are saying that Shoigu is probably negotiating for peace, which a lot of people don't really seem to be big fans of that. Some people are saying that they need more intel, and some are a little bit unsure and undecided, but a lot of people have had many different opinions on this. And Matthew, what are people really thinking about these Russian cargo planes showing up in Iran after Shoigu left? Do they think they're arms shipments, something else entirely? And what are you thinking about it?
All right, so just to recap it just a little bit, we saw the IL-76s landing in Iran for actually a couple of days before Shoigu arrived just yesterday, and even after Shoigu left Iran, more jets have been showing up as well, carrying something, but we're really not aware of what's on these cargo planes. You can sort of take a guess, though. I think it's pretty obvious, actually. But anyways, What are your thoughts? 84% said Russia is arming and supporting Iran, while 10% said, I need more intel on that, and 3% said Shoigu is negotiating for peace. And if you pick the option saying that he's negotiating for peace, the Russian government has tried to propagate the narrative that Shoigu did go down there to call for peace and prevent a large regional war from breaking out. To me, that goes counterproductive to literally everything that Russia represents, and also goes counterproductive to Russia's interests, because right now, the U.S. has all their assets in the Middle East ready to combat Iran, and if Iran has weapons that Russia arms them with, that could basically be a new proxy war, which would distract the West in the Middle East, and maybe allow Russia to gain some momentum in Ukraine if it actually goes to plan. So that could be a reason for that, but I definitely think that Shoigu is not negotiating for peace. That is probably most definitely not while he's there. So I'm actually with the 84%. I think Russia is arming and supporting Iran 100%. And we actually heard from some sources here. This is reported allegedly by the New-York Times. It said 2 Iranian officials familiar with the war planning said that Russia started delivering advanced radars and air defense equipment. And that's according to Iran. So you kind of have to take them at their word on that if you think they're telling the truth. But it sounds like, based on the flights that are showing up day after day, and also these statements here we're hearing from Iranian officials who are anonymous, it sounds like Russia is definitely arming Iran to get ready for a new proxy war in the Middle East. Basically, the U.S. is behind Israel, and Russia is behind Iran. So that seems to be the stage that's being set currently, and I'm with the 84%. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, Shoyu said, we need real peace. Long-lasting peace. Would you like some guns?
They love peace, man. They love peace. The Russians are known for going everywhere around the world and creating peaceful relations with people. That's what they're known for.
Man, I'm telling you, man, I've never seen such a peace like the peace they brought to Ukraine, liberating all that land. I mean, it is so quiet out there. It's like no one's even out there. It's that peaceful. Like the buildings, they're returning to nature. I mean, it surely looks like real peace. And I guess the Russians are really big fans of kind of like spreading that peace around the world, because from what I can tell, they are delivering weapons to Iran, being completely unsarcastic there. It does seem to me that they would be shipping weapons to Iran. We do have to remember that the Russian Federation is viewing this as a possible opportunity to try and draw Western forces and Western attention away from Ukraine and on into the Middle East. If I've learned anything over this past week, I have learned that people in America can be a little fickle, and they can be a little bit unintelligent sometimes. And so, instead of believing that the government apparatus made up of 2.9 million federal employees working in multiple intergovernmental agencies, and then about 1.2 million service members in the U.S. Armed Forces, out of about that combined 4 million people or so, apparently we can only focus on one thing at a time. And so, most of the American public would be completely shifting their attention, if a war started in the Middle East, to the Middle East entirely, instead of focusing on Ukraine and the Middle East, and then also East Asia as well. And while East Asia isn't hot, the situation certainly is tense over there. And so going off of that, I would have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, they are most likely going to be providing weapons and support to Iran to help them out a little bit more with what's going to be going on here really soon, so that way they'll hopefully fare better, or maybe not get blasted as much. Because one thing's going to be for certain, and I don't know, man, it's like, have the Russians really thought about this? Whether they provided an S-300 or an S-400, neither of them have the ability to pick up an F-35. So what does it matter? Like, what does that really matter? It's not like they're helping them much. It's like they're just giving them more weapons that are going to get destroyed by the F-35s.
That's true. And also, if you remember a while back, I think it was about a month ago, I had a really strong suspicion that Russia was going to North Korea, not only to procure weaponry, but also to see if North Korea was willing to cause a provocation with their southern neighbor and see if they could cause a distraction there. And it turned out they actually could not convince North Korea to do anything too severe, or maybe that wasn't the reason they went there. But now it looks like Russia and Shoigu have completely turned their attention to the Middle East, because Iran is actually stupid enough to do Russia's bidding and also put a target on their back to do Russia a favor, which I think, honestly, North Korea was not that extreme, believe it or not, as Iran is. North Korea is a rogue state, but Iran is even more rogue than that, because they're motivated by really, really strong religious beliefs that have been literally brewing up for centuries. So, in this case, I think Russia is looking for a distraction, and I think Iran's actually going to oblige that whole plan right there.
I would have to agree. And also, let's see here. They won't see enough. Let's see. A lot of people are talking about the Iranians. The truth is that if a conflict actually does start to happen in between Iran and Israel, Israel is so technologically advanced compared to Iran, especially in the air conflict scenario, that it is a completely off-skewed kind of a conflict. Even with just the United States involved, in Israel's defense, the defense of Israel is going to be heavily skewed in Israel's favor as well, just off of the technological abilities that we possess. Iran does not have any stealth aircraft, neither do they have any radars that are strong enough or fine-tuned enough to be able to pick up a stealth aircraft and fire on it. Interestingly enough, this is actually something that is incredibly interesting. The only time that a stealth aircraft has ever been shot down in history, it was an F-117 Nighthawk, I believe over Bosnia, if I'm correct. It was shot down in that area, and the reason why it was shot down is because a group, I'm trying to remember, it was either Serbs or Bosnians. Correct me if I'm wrong on the story, because I'm sure many of y'all know the story. But they had some spies that were inside of Italy, and they watched this F-117 Nighthawk take off from its airbase, and so they notified the ground air defense that Nighthawks were on their way. A ground air defense commander sat there and looked at this F-117 fly in with a pair of binoculars, pretty much just cabling in like the exact location of this thing to the anti-air battery he was with. Once the F-117 opened up its bomb bay doors, for that split second, the F-117 actually had a cross-section on their radar, because when the bomb bay opens, there's an actual surface in there where radar waves can refract off of it, and so they're able to pick up the F-117. They then fired the missile directly at the F-117. The bomb bay, of course, closed, so then they had to manually guide it in the rest of the way, but they were able to hit that F-117 and shoot it down, and that was the only time in history so far that there has ever been a ground-to-air kill or any kind of a kill on a stealth aircraft of any kind. And so going off of that, the Iranians would not be that fortunate, and they wouldn't be that lucky. If the Israelis were able to keep down their security inside of Israel, against around an area like their Nimona air, well, I believe it's the Nevatim airbase. I don't know why I keep on calling this thing Nimona, but beyond that, the Nevatim airbase, if they were able to keep security down there and at their other air bases in Iran and make sure that spies weren't able to report forward if there were any stealth aircraft on the way, and also the Israelis made sure to operate them cautiously in some scenarios, they would be able to completely mitigate the Iranians' ability to even try and shoot down one of these aircraft. And not only that, aircraft like the F-35 have a myriad of countermeasures that have been built in since the time of the F-117 that the F-117 never possessed. For example, the F-35 actually has a decoy that can be lowered out of the rear of the aircraft on a tether, put dozens of yards behind the F-35, and it actually emits a radar cross-section. I don't know how the technology works, but it is something that can be picked up on radar, and if a surface-to-air missile was to explode anywhere, it would explode dozens of yards behind the aircraft and ensure that the F-35 didn't take a direct hit. And there was a million other countermeasures that they also built into the F-35 that would make sure to avoid a hit as far as a ground air defense system would go. Even if they tried to manually guide it in or try and keep a lock on it or something along those lines, it would be very difficult for them to be able to do anything like that. But beyond that, I would still say the Iranians are not going to bode well, even if the Russians are supplying them with a lot of arms. Another good reason why I believe that is because the Gulf War in 1991 was fought in between the coalition forces, mostly made up of the United States and the United Kingdom, against the nation of Iraq, which pretty much was using modern-day Russian military equipment that we still see the Russians using today. They had S-300s, they had Iglas, they had all the air defense and all of the modern advanced aircraft that the Soviet Union had, and they still got obliterated. And so going off of that, I would have to say that the Iranians will stand no chance, even if the Russians are providing them with advanced air defense systems. They're not factoring in that the Israelis are about a whole generation or two, at least technology-wise, ahead of the Iranians at this point. And so with that,
And also, how can Iran go up against a coalition like the U.S. has now built? We've put so many assets in the region. We have F-18s going to the region. We have our F-35s. We have the Wasp amphibious group there, and we also have a carrier strike group as well. So we have so many things in the region. Unless like another country decides to step up and help Iran, like maybe Russia, and I'm not really sure if that's even possible at this point, then Iran is just screwed all the way around. Because if the U.S. decides to go on the offensive because they start getting attacked or whatever, Iran is totally screwed.
I would agree. And also, by the way, speaking of naval assets, since Matthew brought them all up, the carrier strike group is the USS Teddy Roosevelt, or Roosevelt, whichever way you call it. I call it Roosevelt, but I know a lot of people say Roosevelt. So, and that's also the correct pronunciation is Roosevelt. But beyond that, the Roosevelt carrier strike group is currently in the Persian Gulf in an undisclosed location. I'm sure the Iranians have a drone somewhere around that is watching it. Because they usually do that. And then, man, you remember that one time, though, that the Dwight D. Eisenhower was sailing through the Strait of Hormuz, and the Iranians had that drone out there flying over it, looking at it, and they were like, we can see your carrier, we can blow it up. And then the U.S. Navy posted a picture of a Black Hawk helicopter flying right by the drone, and they snapped a picture of the stupid drone up there. Dude, that was horrendous. That was like the disrespect.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's like Iran has a death wish or something at this point. They go and taunt the most powerful country in the world on purpose. Like, they seek us out to taunt us, knowing that we could glass them at any moment. Luckily, though, for their benefit, they know the U.S. is not anxious to glass their country because they don't want to escalate too badly. But there is, well, I was about to say there is a red line, but I really don't know. We'll just have to wait and see what time shows us if there is a red line. But presumably, though, there is a certain point which we would get to when we decide it's time to go offensively and attack Iran with Israel and also the coalition as well. And it seems like Iran really thinks that's impossible because the way they're acting is they're invincible.
Yeah, I mean, it is, they act like they're invincible to be such a weak country. I mean, Operation Praying Mantis really showed back in the day that they were incredibly weak, and now they want to act like they're strong. I don't get the Iranians, but they're going to learn their lesson one day. Also, one more reason why I brought up the Teddy Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group is that right now you're going to hear of two Roosevelts, and I saw this in the comments section from some people. I don't mean to be rude about this stuff, but I have to just say it as it is. They apparently weren't paying attention because I took like 5 minutes on stream last time to explain this. There are two USS Roosevelts in the area right now. There's the USS Teddy Roosevelt, which is the aircraft carrier strike group that is in the Persian Gulf at the moment. And then there's another USS Roosevelt that is in the Eastern Mediterranean right now, which is an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer. They have the same name, but they are two completely different ships. One of them is a DDG, I believe it's DDG-80, which is the USS Roosevelt Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, and then the other one, I forgot its number. It's like CVN 64. It's a CVN, though, which stands for a carrier, and it is the USS Teddy Roosevelt inside of the Persian Gulf. I have to make sure that that's very clear because if we ever go into a naval assets breakdown and I'm like talking about there's a Roosevelt strike group here, and then the USS Roosevelt is off the Mediterranean, I have to make it clear time and time again that those are two different ships. They have almost the same name, but they're completely different. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best I can. And before we actually move on down there, because we actually have a lot of news still to cover inside of Ukraine, and we also have a lot of picture and video evidence, the first that we've ever gotten from Morozovsk airfield on the ground, which is showing that the place got freaking splattered. It looked like Hiroshima happened on that airfield, and we're going to be getting to that here in just a second, but we're going to be moving down into the Middle East really quickly to cover at least a recap, or at least a follow-up on what's going on down there compared to what we were talking about on Sunday. But before we get to that, we do have a very interesting question to ask y'all about the Middle East before we actually get into all of the news of what's been going on down there. Because reports have indicated that Israel is preparing a preemptive strike against Iranian-backed forces throughout the Middle East. And a lot of people are wondering, what does that mean? And a lot of people say Israel most likely has intel of an Iranian attack. Whether they do or do not, y'all will probably find out in this next news segment that we're about to get into, which almost sounds like we'll be back after the break, Matthew. That almost sounded like that. I was like, like some of y'all may be thinking that you'll find that out after the commercial break. But beyond that, some people are saying Israel's getting tired of waiting. They want action now and right now, damn it. Others are saying that it seems just kind of like rumors, and some are unsure and undecided about this. But Matthew, what are people thinking? And what are people saying about this? Do they really think that Israel has intelligence of an upcoming Iranian attack, like it is definite now? Or are they tired of waiting? And what are you thinking about it?
All right, and just for some quick backstory to let you know what we found out about this entire question, we're being told by Channel 12 News in Israel that advanced preparations are underway within the Israeli military for the launch of a preemptive strike against Hezbollah targets across Lebanon. So the strike would be specifically into Lebanon, hitting these Hezbollah targets, and that's what we're hearing. And also recall that Israel said they would only consider doing a preemptive strike unless they had 100% proof that Iran was going to attack their territory and they were going to try to hit them hard. So it sounds like they might have intel of an imminent Iran attack that's going to be very large, and that they're figuring that unless they go into Lebanon and start taking out some of these proxy forces, then they could be in foul shape. So I'm actually with the 68% that said Israel has intel of an Iran attack, while 17% said Israel is getting tired of waiting, and 7% said it seems like just rumors to me. And the people that said 17%, y'all have a good point, but I think the United States would be very, very irritated with Israel if they simply decided to prematurely go in and do a preemptive strike. I think the U.S., with the current strategy, would almost start threatening Israel to the point of stupidity if they did that. So I really doubt that Israel would do it without concrete evidence. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, I'll be honest with you, man. America ain't gonna do nothing, man. We need to come back where we are. But beyond that, I would have to say the Israelis most likely do have intelligence of an attack that's coming. It actually looks to me like it will be very soon. However, I'm not gonna give you all a timetable because everyone's getting the timetables wrong right now. Like even a presidential candidate and the president both said, I think it was like what 36 hours ago, Matthew. They were like, "Yep, an attack's happening in 24 hours," and that window came and went. And it's like it didn't happen. It's like I just don't think anyone knows when the
Nobody
attack
knows, man.
Yeah, no one actually knows, and that's why I keep on telling y'all. I'm like, if anyone actually says, now I'm going to include the president of the United States in that. Even if the president of the United States says an attack is coming in this period of time, he doesn't know either. It's just that people are pressuring them to have an answer. They don't have an answer, but people are. Like I don't mean to say this in like a rude way, but really I like we have had a very interesting time having to deal with people out there in the world this week, and it's really making me kind of a little bit annoyed with like the general way some people think here in this country. But a lot of people are really goofy, I guess is the best way to explain it, and they expect that there should be an answer to everything, even if there isn't an answer. And so everyone keeps on going, okay, what's it going to happen? And they just keep on harassing everyone in the government. And so then they just come up with these bullshit time windows of when it's going to happen. No one knows when it's going to happen. I would say it is going to happen soon, though. I'll get into that here in a little bit, but that's probably why everyone keeps on coming up with the timetables.
Do you know what the reason why they're having a hard time figuring out when this attack's going to happen this time around? Because last time the Iranians had to pull out all their equipment and they attacked pretty much shortly after that. So it was pretty obvious from satellite imagery that we knew they were about to attack because we saw significant movements of equipment in the Iranian country itself. But this time, though, Iran has already pulled out their equipment and it's ready to go. And there's really no way to tell if they're actually ready to do it because right now, I'm sure they're relying on a lot of human intelligence on the ground to figure out what the Iranian government is actually saying because, you know, you got to remember, human is not very reliable and it's very hard to get that information. It's a lot easier to look at signals intelligence and things like that and figure out who's moving what equipment where, and it looks like an attack might be imminent. But right now, they really don't have that. So that's why really nobody knows when this is going to happen. But it sounds like Israel might have a better idea than we do of, you know, more of a close estimate of when it might actually happen.
I would have to agree with that. I think that's true. And also another thing is that we are waiting. Like, you know, it's really hard to explain this. I'm gonna give it another shot and give it a lot more of a complete talk through here. People in the American public expect that the government has an answer to everything. Like, they really do. Like, when you watch them, they always think that the government is like the grand game planner. Like, they just know everything. Everything happens because of the government, and so the government has the answer to everything as well. And the truth is, and this is something that a lot of people for some reason just either do not want to comprehend or they just are goofy and they don't comprehend it. I don't know which it is, but they act like that isn't the case. Like, the government isn't run by just a group of people like them who really don't know what's going on most of the time. And so people come up to him and they go, oh, when's this attack going to happen? We must know, damn it. And so everyone wants to come up with an answer. And usually it's got to happen soon because these people are not going to leave them alone until they have an answer. And so then they come up with something like, it'll happen in 72 hours or it'll happen in 24 hours. And it doesn't happen in 72 hours and 24 hours. And they're just putting that answer out because people keep on harassing them to give them an answer when they don't know either. There are some clear signs that the Department of Defense would be looking for to see when an attack would happen. Usually it's some sort of an armed force movement, and there usually is some sort of a public explanation for it, like a military drill. That's actually one of the most common excuses, is a military exercise, and usually that's when you know that something is about to happen. That's why whenever a military exercise happens, most of the time that's one of the tensest moments in the ebb and flow of that time period is when an exercise is happening. Like, for example, Operation Able Archer in 1985 almost created a hot war in between the Soviet Union and the United States, because a military exercise is a perfect way to explain away a massive movement of troops and equipment from point A to point B without it looking like it's a preparation for an offensive. You just go, hey man, I'm just training over here. We're just training our armed forces. This is nothing, just, it's fine. You don't have to worry about it at all. But to the other side, it looks like they're moving all of their forces towards the border. Like for the Soviet Union, it was towards East Germany and the Czech Republic. It looks like they're getting ready to start off a war because this could very well be it. It's just like how the Russian Federation started their invasion of Ukraine in 2022 by saying that they were conducting a military exercise around the border of Ukraine, and that was used as a mere excuse to begin an armed forces buildup and a supply buildup, so that way they could start to put their actual offensive plan into existence and in motion. And that's pretty much the same thing that we would be looking for in the Middle East. We would be looking for the Iranian ground forces to start moving heavily based off of satellite pictures, and we probably would also be waiting for the Iranians to excuse a lot of those movements by saying that this is some sort of a military exercise or a drill that they are conducting. That would either give us...
That's one thing right there that Iran is very good at. They are like the grand masters at trying to feint these attacks, because Iran has so far has given several signs that they might be preparing to do it within the next 24 hours. For example, tomorrow on Wednesday, they're closing government offices and banks, which would seem to be a pretty straightforward sign. That's a little bit out of the norm, and why would they be doing that unless an attack is coming? But I would not take that alone as proof that it's about to happen tomorrow, because they've done things in the past, like, for example, telling Israel and putting out videos showing the destruction of Israel, saying that in the next 24 hours you're going to feel pain, and then nothing happened. So Iran is trying to confuse everybody, and I think this time they perfected their methods, because last time they made some crucial mistakes. They gave Israel a long heads up to get ready for an attack, but this time they've realized, Israel really didn't fall for that stupid tactic last time, so let's go ahead and pull the military equipment out, so that way they can't tell that we're moving stuff around, and they won't know when it's going to happen. And also, let's try to psych them out over many, many days, that we're going to do it now, then we're not, then we're going to do it tomorrow, then we're not, and then nobody will know when it's going to happen.
And also, another thing that does for the Iranians is that wears down the Israelis, because every time the Iranians do that, the Israelis go, red alert, everyone to their stage, pretty much man their positions. So then you have the air defense guys running out to their SAM systems in the middle of the night. They're getting no sleep. Eventually, the Iranians are going to wear these guys down to where they're exhausted and they're not really working at peak efficiency. And then they're going to launch the strike then. Because you have to remember, there's a lot of human elements that are at play here that they're trying to work with and manipulate. And that's probably also something that the Iranians are trying to work towards as well, is getting the Israeli ground air defense exhausted at this point, so that way when the actual attack happens, they may not be operating at full efficiency because they're exhausted. So that's another reason why they're going to be psyching people out over and over and over again, is trying to wear out the Israeli ground air defense before an attack even happens. But still, with all of that in mind, I would say that an attack is probably going to happen soon. It seems to be that it's fairly clear at this point, and I will be telling you all why here in a second. But before we get into that, I do have to say that it has been the craziest night for questions and super chats. In the first hour alone, we have gotten an unbelievable amount of super chats. It's been insane. I got to thank everyone so much for supporting the channel. As many of y'all may know, this stream was not really pushed hardly at all tonight. I did see some people in the chat saying that it was pushed to them, but it seems as though most people said that they got no notification that the stream had gone live until about an hour in, which means about 28 minutes ago or so. So a lot of people didn't even know that we were live when we went on air, and somehow, crazily enough, we still got up to a peak of 8.9 thousand people tonight. So it looks as though the Leaf Spring Army, no matter what, still reps the set. I can't believe that, actually. That's crazy, Matthew. Like, we hardly got pushed, and we still almost got up to 9,000 live viewers, which is really showing how dedicated the Leaf Spring Army is to this channel and being here every night. And I got to thank you all for that. That's incredibly kind of you all. And I also got to thank everyone, once again, who supported the channel tonight, because, of course, like I've said many times, millions of pretty much every day, y'all are the ones who help this channel to keep on running, for everyone to be here, to be able to watch this show. We do this as a full-time job, and so to be able to do this as a full-time job, we have to be able to make a living off of this thing, and Super Chats are pretty much the only way that we do that. We run an ad-free, sponsor-free stream 6 days a week, every single day. We don't make a cent off of ads. We don't make a single cent off of sponsors. Y'all are the only way that we keep this channel running, and so a huge thanks to everyone who's been watching so far tonight. We still got a lot to go, and a huge thanks to everyone who's also been supporting the channel as well. And really quickly, Matthew, I understand that we have a couple of those questions lined up, and what do we got?
All right, so our first super chat of the night is going to go to Ted Marshall, the longtime channel legend, who put in a $100 donation.
Hey!
Massive support, and thank you very much, Ted, for helping to keep the work running with that generous support. He said, "I'm just doing my part to help keep the lights on at Enforcer HQ, and thanks for the regular short war summaries as well, and LSA."
And thank you so much for that unbelievable support, Ted Marshall, and helping this channel to keep on running. That is incredibly nice of you. And I got to thank you for helping to keep the lights on at Enforcer HQ. It is folks like you who help to make this channel possible, help us to keep this thing running. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And also, really quickly, speaking of keeping the lights on, I just saw someone, Matthew, say this. I'm going to prove this wrong on stream. So, Doggy said, "No ad money, LMAO, you're lying." You know what? I'm going to prove it. Don't ban them. Don't ban them. I'm going to prove it. And then if they say something stupid, then you can ban them afterwards. But I'm going to prove this to you all really quickly. I'm going to go to our live section on our YouTube control room. And so here it is. These are all of our live streams that we have run, and you can see that the monetization is off, meaning that we do not run ads on these streams. Not a single one. 2 of them have actually been copyrighted. Well, have had copyrighted elements in them for one reason or another, but still, all of them do not have ads on them. Every single one of them runs no ads. They have no sponsors. They are what they are. I mean, that's something that we've been doing for a very long time on this channel, is running an ad-free, sponsor-free stream. I don't say that just as fluff or filler, like a whole bunch of other people would, just to make it sound nice. We legitimately run no ads or have any sponsors on this channel. And so the super chats are the only way that we get to support this channel, and that's why we spend so much time thanking each super chatter and talking to each of them, is because they're the only thing that helps this channel to keep on running. Like, all of y'all here right now, the 8.4 thousand people who are here right now, all of y'all are able to watch this channel completely ad-free and sponsor-free because a very small amount of our viewers, about 40 to 50 of them a night out of about the 130,000 we get on each stream, support the channel. And just because of those 40 or 50 people alone breaking the model of this channel, where no one has to support a cent or spend a single second of time watching an ad to support this channel, they help it to be possible for everyone else. And so that's why we give so much time and so much thanks to them. Because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be able to be here and get to cover the news for everyone else who gets to watch the channel the way we intended it for everyone, which is ad-free and sponsor-free. And you don't have to support the channel even a single cent. And so with that, I hope that addresses that well, because a lot of people like to call cap on that, although you can literally just show that in the YouTube control room like we just did right there. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again, Ted Marshall, for enjoying our streams and also enjoying our short war summaries as well. We put in a lot of effort into those things. It looks like a load of people enjoyed the one we put out today. It's gotten close to about 250,000 views. We think it's actually going to get really close to about 300,000 views here before the end of tomorrow. So I got to say a huge thanks to everyone who's been watching that and enjoying that as well. And because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here. We wouldn't be able to cover the news for so many people. And we thank you so much, Ted Marshall, and everyone else tonight who finds this channel to be a primary source of news, not only on Ukraine, but around the world, and keeping a very positive and pro-Western outlook on every single area of the globe. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we will be making sure to move on to the next one. But still, thank you so much once again for the support, Ted Marshall, and long live the Leaf Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $100 super chat, and we have the return of a channel legend with a very interesting name. First name Jenna, last name Tolls. And thank you very much for that $100 support. And we appreciate it very much, Jenna and last name Tolls. They said, I like turtles.
And I like
We all
turtles.
like turtles.
I mean, I think everyone likes
You
turtles.
sounded confused about that when you were like, I like turtles. Like there's bad implications to that.
I mean, I was like, I don't know. I was like, do I like turtles? I don't like snapping turtles. We actually had one near our house a while ago, and I was scared to let the corgis out because, you know, like, what if a corgi went up and sniffed it, and then it got nipped on the nose, and it took the corgi's nose off? I would have to kill the turtle at that point. But beyond that, I thank you so much for the support, Genitals, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here. We wouldn't be able to make this stream possible. We wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support, Genitals. He said. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and being possible. And so with that, I hope we addressed it incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the last question of the segment. And then we're going to be moving on into the Middle Eastern news. And then we'll return right back up into Ukraine and round out the rest of the news we have up there.
All right, and the last super chat of the segment goes to BC Skyman, who's also a channel legend, the legend, and he puts in an $80 donation. And huge shout out to you, BC, for always supporting the channel through thick and thin, always supporting us. We appreciate that very much. And also, no comment left to address, sadly, but we appreciate it always. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, a huge thank you so much for the support, BC Skyman. You didn't throw in a comment, but I don't think there needs to be any comment for an introduction of BC Skyman in any single night. BC Skyman is an absolute legend of this channel. You've been here since day 4 of the war, and you've been here with us every day since. I gotta thank you so much for still being here with us, enjoying the channel enough to support it and help it to keep on running, and making sure that a true old guard and legend of the Lee Spring Army is here pretty much every single night. Minus hunting trips, those are ones that you do take off, and it's always cool to hear the stories when you come back of how fun it was. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible, and we wouldn't have had the kind of inspiration and the kind of amazing folks behind us here on this channel that have really made it possible for us to have the moxie to get on here every day and run this thing. I mean, you know, it's interesting the kind of people who watch this channel that you just don't even know about. Funnily enough, it seems like pretty much everyone in the world has watched this channel, because we'll go places where we thought we've never been heard of, and people have heard of us at this point, which is just really bizarre. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's like, how in the hell are these people watching the show? But beyond
we got a lot of people out there lying in wait, you know what I mean? They're out there just waiting for their chance. Get a good swing at us and stuff like that, but they don't know us that well, though. They apparently haven't been watching long enough to realize that we're not the type to get swung at and just walk off. That's usually not the way it works. So we usually swing back sometimes. Actually, most of the time.
Well, actually, pretty much every time. Pretty much every single time. But that is something that I got to say I'm proud of. I'm proud that we don't back off, unlike other people who will do very stupid things and then try and delete all their videos and act like they didn't do stupid things and win stupid prizes. Or other people who run their mouths and then they never follow through with it. Like, they run their mouth so much and then they become a guest on someone else's show and then they get bitched out for about a good hour and a half or anything like that. We aren't those kind of people. And I gotta say that it's a good thing that we aren't. And really, it's because of folks like y'all who have been steadfast with us the entire time. Many people like BC Skyman were with us during the dark ages of the channel, when plenty of folks just wanted to attack us for the hell of it because of some whole deal concerning the hot dog man. But I gotta say, thank you so much, BC Skyman, for sticking around with us. Thank you for always being a part of the Lee Spring Army, and thank you for always being a living old guard and a legend of the channel here pretty much every night and supporting the channel and helping to keep on running. And so with that, thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I'm seeing a lot of people, before we move on really quickly, talking about the monetization of this channel. Some people are saying it would be nice to have memberships. It would make you more money. It would be nice to put sponsorships on the streams. That would make you more money, probably take less time. The truth is, folks, is that we make a living doing this, for sure. No doubt about it. But the thing is that it's not about the money, and we're not trying to squeeze a turnip dry here and just kill it with making money. That's kind of a ridiculous way to run a channel, in my opinion, especially one like ours where we're trying to spread a message of being pro-American and pro-Western interests. It's not really a... What?
No, nothing. It was just a little something on the floor, but it's all right. Go right ahead.
Oh, okay, all right. But anyways, it's not about the money, Spider-Man. It's more about American and Western interests. And while we do have to make a living doing this thing and running this channel, I really don't want to bleed the turnip dry, if y'all know what I mean. I don't want to sit there and try and monetize every single facet of the channel. I want y'all to actually be able to enjoy what we do instead of having to constantly be harassed and constantly stressed about trying to support us with some amount of money somewhere somehow, or having to watch an ad or listen to a sponsor on literally everything we do. I don't really like the concept of that. I don't really like other folks who do that. I feel like they over monetize their channel, and it's not really about the message they're trying to send or the content that they're trying to make. It's more so about just trying to rake in as much money as they can, so that way when the thing implodes, they are just living the lap of luxury. And so that's usually why we don't have memberships. We don't really have sponsors. We don't have any of this stuff. We just make sure to run the channel the way it is, and if people want to support it, they can. And if people don't want to support it, the channel will die. I mean, that's the way I really look at it. Like, if people don't enjoy the channel enough, or even just a small group of people to support it, like with super chats every night, then it deserves to die. Like, people aren't that into it. We shouldn't be trying to bleed the turnip dry so that we can keep this thing running well on into the future, even if people really aren't behind it that much anymore. That's the way I look at it. And so, you know, we kind of run it a little wild and dangerous, maybe, but still at the same time, it's the way I would want to run it. Because I wouldn't want to be a sellout and end up just, you know, doing whatever the sponsors want, making sure that we're ad friendly for YouTube all the time, and becoming PG and really cleansed of what we are and who we are. I wouldn't do that a single moment. That might be why other people may not like this channel, because we're honest folks. We run the channel the way it should be run, instead of running it like a skis, like pretty much everyone else does it. And also, y'all are probably like, wait a minute, he's not talking about so-and-so. I'm pretty much talking about everyone at this point. I honestly have not run into a single person on this platform who isn't a skis. Like, no joke. Like, what's crazy about that, with me saying that, is that half of the people I'm talking about in that statement, I actually used to watch their channels growing up. Like, I would be in high school and I would watch several of the channels that we've ended up apparently getting on bad terms with, and I used to think, oh, that's a pretty interesting channel, you know, maybe one day I'll get to talk to those people. And then funnily enough, we do get to talk to them, and they're assholes, pretty much every single one of them. It's a standard given rule at this point. Everyone on YouTube is an asshole. So, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's because we run the channel the way we do, you know, or maybe it's that the channel's successful and theirs aren't. I don't know. But still, pretty wild stuff. But still, thank you so much once again for support, BC Skyman, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we still wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so with that,
I'll tell you what, I got plenty of cans of Bot Be Gone, but I need some cans of like something to get rid of these centipedes out of here, man. Because that thing just ran over my foot a second ago.
Centipede?
And I was a centipede. And I looked down, and I could have sworn it looked like a snake. I was like, no way a damn rattlesnake just got up in here and was crawling over my foot or something like that. But it was a centipede, and it just got the boot. It's gone.
Man, dude, man, I was like, when you screamed, I thought it was something else. You know what I'm talking about, because you know, those are fairly common in this house. But I was like, okay. I was like, we'll just overlook that. You know, I know that it's not that, but apparently it was a centipede. Those are actually down here a lot nowadays. Like, I've seen like maybe 2 of them in my room, like over the past like 2 or 3 days. But that will scare you when you look down at your foot and there's something on it that isn't supposed to be on it. That will scare you. Oh man, I mean, look at that boiler.
Mr. President, we just had a second crawly come in the room.
Mr. President, there's been a second centipede. Oh no, we gotta leave. But anyways, moving on from that, and thank you so much once again for support, BC Skyman. Once again, thank you to everyone who supported the channel tonight. We're now going to be moving on into the Middle East, and it's finally time to answer that question that we started talking about a little while ago, right before we got into the question segment. Is Iran going to be striking soon? And my answer would be probably so. When? We don't know. It probably will be within the next week, maybe. But that's even a really wild guess, and that's probably crystal balling to the extreme even right now. But we are starting to hear that Iran is moving their missile forces at this very moment, according to the Wall Street Journal. And I'll read y'all exactly what the post says. The Wall Street Journal reports that U.S. officials have started seeing Iran moving missile launchers and conducting military drills. This is the exact thing I was telling you all about a moment ago that would give us a clear indicator that an attack is coming soon, because now they are moving their armed forces. And so that is giving us a very clear idea that they are going to be conducting this strike fairly soon. Might not be tomorrow, it might be a couple of days in the future, but they are starting to move their forces into position and prepare themselves for a strike against Israel. Israel is already starting to eyeball some form of a preemptive attack on Iran to try and either weaken their attack or to completely stop it from happening in the first place. But it seems as though they're going to be trying to go for the proxies first. Israel has also stated that the proxies will be the ones to attack first. I got to be honest, that statement kind of came out late. We had already ascertained that about 2 or 3 days ago. Maybe the IDF ought to work with us. We can get them the information really quickly. But beyond that, we do know that the attack is going to be coming from the proxies, like in southern Lebanon first, meaning that Lebanon will probably be bombed pretty horrifically up until then. And we also got to see a couple of other recaps of news as well, at least within the Middle East. And I heavily annotated this because I knew we weren't going to have enough time tonight on stream. And we really don't, because we're already going to start running overtime here on the news segment, because it's been about an hour and 40 minutes, and we haven't even gotten back to Ukraine yet, and about the half of the news that's still left up there. But inside of Iraq, we did get to hear that Iran issued NOTAMs over areas like Al-Fallujah, which is possibly showing us that they're going to be launching attacks from proxies inside of Iran, well, actually inside of Iraq, which is pretty bizarre. We also got to hear that 7 U.S. service members were injured today inside of Al-Assad Air Base. Apparently 5 service members and 2 civilian contractors were wounded. 2 of them had to be airlifted for further medical assistance. 5 of them were treated for minor injuries at the airfield. We also got to hear that 12 FA-18s have arrived from an unknown country. We're most likely expecting maybe the U.S. Navy or the Australian Air Force, because the Australian Air Force also operates some FA-18s. We're not really sure who these are from, but still, very interesting to hear. Also, really quickly, sorry, correction, it actually says it's from the USS Theodore Roosevelt. Sorry about that, it's actually the U.S. Navy. But moving on from that and out of the area, it is now time for us to move on up really quickly to Lakenheath in the UK, which is actually attached to our Middle Eastern news, because we did get to see that an additional 12 US Air Force F-22s were landing at Lakenheath today, and apparently this is a part of their jump into the Middle East, where they will then be stationed waiting for the Iranian attack. Look at them go. Oh!
Beautiful.
Why
Look at those kids out there.
Why don't you stop playing that beautiful music? And here comes the next one. Also, notice that they mounted drop tanks onto the F-22, showing that they most likely, well, not most likely, they definitely were extending their range for that transatlantic crossing that they just got done with a moment ago. I'm not gonna lie, man, drop tanks on an F-22 actually look really cool.
They really do. Like, it's unusual to see it. Like, you usually don't see them with that, so it's kind of unique.
Yeah, I mean, you don't see him with it because those drop tanks make its cross-section the size of an F-15. So it is terrible for stealth reasons. Like, in fact, it's not even a stealth aircraft with drop tanks on. The cross-section's massive with those. But it is for extended range flight. And so I gotta say, while it completely negates the stealth aspect of the plane, it is really cool looking. Man. What a
thing's
video.
loud as hell too. Like, those are extremely loud.
Man, those turbojet engines, they're always loud on those military aircraft. But moving on from Lakenheath, we're now going to be moving on out of the Middle East in our quick little footnote on what's going on down there. There's still a lot more that happened today than what meets the eye, but we can't cover it all because, you know, it is what it is. Like, we have so much news to cover in Ukraine, we can't really do anything. Well, we can't do everything. But moving on up into Morozovsk, we did get to see that the damage was freaking insane from the attacks over the past few days. We were able to see that the ammo depot at Morozovsk is confirmed to have been blitzed. It's completely blown up. Nothing is left. We can see pieces of some bombs and some explosives. Also, possibly some sort of a vehicle, because we can see what almost looks like suspension or maybe some sort of a bomb rack that exploded here with missiles inside of it. We can also see some more munitions as well. These actually are, this one in particular is actually unexploded still. It's a kind of a guided munition. I think it's a KH-29T, if I'm correct. We can also see some Fab 500s or Fab 250s possibly within the rubble right there, unexploded. We can also see a couple of more ordnance, both exploded and unexploded, but still, you can get the idea. The ammo depot's gone at the airfield, completely blown away, and there's going to be hardly anything, if anything at all, that's usable there. We also got to see that Morozovsk was apparently hit a little bit more just overnight. Look at that.
Holy crap. Damn. Damn.
We don't...
Man, these munitions and, like, depot fires are crazy.
Dang.
Another leveling is in effect.
Then, moving on back to the damage that they had already sustained, we did get to see more proof of the heavy damage at Morozovsk airfield. Man, I'm telling you, man, them Russians, them Ruskies, they're winning that war, man. I mean, hell, look at this.
I don't think I've ever seen one of Russia's air bases in this foul of shape. Like, they've really, like, the Morozovsk airfield has been just destroyed.
Dude, the Ukrainians, like, turned into that, like, ape meme, like, where, like, the U meme. Let me go see if I can find that, man. Hang on. The U meme. Hang on. Oh, this one. Hang on, man. Yeah, it's this one. Okay, so, dude, the Ukrainians just one day, they looked at Morozovsk and they just did this. You. And then they just started bombing the shit out of it. Like, it's like, I don't know why. Like, you know, there's a lot of other air bases nearby, like Yesk and others, that they could have attacked and damaged quite significantly, like Morozovsk, but apparently something about Morozovsk really put it on the radar. I believe it's because it's housing a fighter-bomber brigade right now at the moment, because we do know that they also took losses as well, because we were able to see a destroyed Su-34 airframe at Morozovsk in this video. This is the only one that we have so far, but we do believe that there are others that have been destroyed at the base as well.
Fantastic. Got burned completely out.
To a crisp.
Oh, what are they doing? Painting it or something? What are they doing?
Bro, okay, paint it up, make it look good.
No way. Bro,
That
he's
does
out here
sound
trying to
like
buff
paint.
it out.
Bro.
Man, they said, Ruski, go out there, bliat, and buff that out. He said, yes, sir.
Man, he said, put some
What the
armor
hell?
on the dash, bliat, we're going to sell it for the shit. And he's like, yes, and they're spray painting it. It's like, the thing's burned. It's like it's been burned to a crisp. Look at the
I
back
cannot
of it.
believe this, man. This is insanity. Like, they're actually out here painting it. Like, what else could they be doing rather than painting it? It looks like they're spraying on blue paint.
Listen, no, you can hear the sound of the compressed air in the can. Listen. Oh my god! It's like, I can't believe
Oh my
this.
god. And the Russians uploaded this. Like, we're gonna fix our burned out airplane. It's been completely destroyed from the ground up. We're just gonna fix it by some paint on the nose. Man, at least the nose will be in good shape.
Man, I'll tell you something, man. Them Raskutskis, man, they're winning that war, man. I mean, that bitch before long, they're gonna be damn hell. They're gonna win.
Wait. Somebody said it's slightly used. Man, they're gonna try to list this thing on eBay with some
Low
fake ass
mileage.
pictures. Like, they're gonna take some pictures of the front, like fuselage, and say, "See, here's proof. It's perfect paint, not a scratch." And they're gonna like forgo taking pictures of the rest of it that's been burned out and try to sell it on the black market.
Man, the sucker who buys this thing, man, is going to be in for a ride. But anyways, Morozovsk was completely obliterated. Like, I don't think we really have to go further into the video and picture evidence to prove the obliteration at that airfield, but it was pretty damn bad from the last attack. Moving on from that and up into our location unknowns, we also got to hear that apparently an Mi-28 was taken out today by an FPV drone. We didn't believe it until we got the still picture, apparently from the unreleased clip, where an FPV drone is literally just feet away from the tail rotor of an Mi-28NM that was flying somewhere in Ukraine. So we do believe at this moment that this Mi-28 was taken out. We don't have the video footage of the drone hitting it yet, so, you know, it's still a little bit up in the air, but it seems that the story is close to being true that an Mi-28 could have been taken out by an FPV drone, which would be the first time in the war that an FPV drone has taken out a helicopter on either side. Moving on from that, we also got the Russian casualty report as well, and it was pretty freaking good.
Oh, we got one Bobcat today. That's better than 0. I'm glad to see they got an extra one. But man, these other losses are looking juicy as hell. And forced to tell us more.
Man, I'm telling you what, they were good today. 1,050 Russian troops were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 8 APCs, 54 supply trucks, 4 main battle tanks, 39 artillery pieces, 36 drones, and 6 cruise missiles, along with the 1 Bobcat skid steer. Overall, it was a pretty good day for the Ukrainian armed forces, and it does seem as though they were still inflicting very high losses onto the Russians' armed forces. We also got to see, up in the Vovchansk area, that they were apparently styling on them by using a 105mm M101. A really old American artillery piece that was being used today by the Ukrainian armed forces. And you see them firing it. Doosh. Classic, man. Classic American firepower. When you see them getting the gun ready now. Setting it up. This is like a flashback at this point. You now see them getting out the propellant. The charge, if you want to call it that. Wow.
Man, those plates that guy's wearing are thick as hell. Like, those are some really, like, good plates you got there.
Dude, that's like the plates you would find on a boiler, man. Like, I would look at that and I go, wow. Look at that boiler. Oh man! And when you see them loading it again, it's a 105mm, so it's not that powerful, but it does pack a punch. It's really cool to watch this thing in operation. It's an older piece, but it still checks out. And here's the impacts downrange. And with that, this is the end of the clip, but really nice to see some vintage artillery being used up in the Vovchansk area, hopefully effective fire support. Moving on from that and down towards Krasnoyarchinsky, we also got to see a Gyansk B getting hit pretty hard. Chad music ensues. Someone needs to put out a general order that there can be no more music on any videos from either side, period. I think that needs to be a rule in Geneva Convention. But damn, they got it. It blew up. It's gone.
Wow. Let's see that again, Jack.
Man, look at it. It's in a bunch of places. The Ruskies, the Ruskiski Fedorotsky, they're winning the war, man. Damn, dude.
That was a big explosion, man. That went up in a big ball of fire.
Man, I mean, I'm telling you, man, that was a big old one. But moving on from that now to the area, we are now moving down to Chasiv Yar. We didn't really get a lot of information out of the Bakhmut direction today, but we did get to see some drone footage from the Black Swan unit showing the damage that Chasiv Yar has sustained so far, and it is pretty significant, of course. The battle has been raging around Chasiv Yar for months, and it has been subjected to a heavy amount of artillery fire from the Russians. Let's see here. We can see one of the churches in the town heavily damaged by artillery. And I see a lot of people agreeing with the rule I want to put out that there should be no music in the war videos. Oh, man, I'm telling you, like, after doing this for 895 days, you hear the same 10 songs 10,000 times. It's like Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You, but every day of the year at this point.
I will say, though, at least the Ukrainians use non-copyrighted music for the most part sometimes, because the Iranians just straight up use copyright music on all their propaganda. Because I think every time we've shown something from Iran in one of their like little videos of the cheese tunnel, we get copyrighted every single time we show one of their videos. It's like, dude, it's like not only are they like stealing stuff, they're also stealing the music as well.
Man, they're over there. They'll sing a song, man. Al-Basiri al-Bashar Wahmadi Sulami al-Basiri al-Bashar, and it's like copyright. It's like, how is that copyright? It's like that was literally sung like in a war zone. It's like, how in the world is there a copyright for this? But anyways, moving on from that though, it's nice to see that Chasiv Yar, it's doing rough, but it is showing that the Ukrainians are holding considering the amount of damage that has been sustained. Moving on from that, we do have a little bit of unfortunate news today. It does appear the Russian Federation has been able to capture the town of Niu-York. This video is taken from the northwestern side, showing a Russian soldier planting the flag of Russia over New York. It does appear that the Ukrainian forces tried to hold as dogged a resistance as possible, but still, the Russian Federation was able to just brute force their way on through the town, and the Ukrainians have withdrawn to further defensive positions on the hills to the west of New York.
So, unfortunately, you see that live chat from Loud Tim.
Let's see here. I'm trying to find it.
Oh god!
I had to do it. The worms, the worms.
Listen, I dropped it off in the park and I had to leave it. That's some weird stuff, man.
Bro. I
What's going on?
saw.
I'm telling you,
Listen, man. I think we could actually just talk about that because that's comical. Like, so many of y'all may know that there is this one person who is a candidate in America who is known for having a dead worm in their brain, and apparently recently they came out and said that the dead worm made them drop off a bear carcass in Central Park, which has become this massive meme online. Like, I saw one today, Matthew. It was like the good angel and bad angel on each shoulder, and it was like the worm, and then it was like, dump it in the park, do it.
And also he staged a bike accident to make it look like the bear had been like taken out by a bicycle. It's like, dude, there's no bears in Central Park. It's like, who's hitting bears in the middle of Central Park in the middle of the biggest city?
Oh my lord, that was actually the craziest thing I've heard. Like, you know, you sit there, like, sitting back, just looking at it, and of course, like we do on this channel, on a no politics level, really in our life, we don't really get into politics a lot at all, and we sit back and we look at this whole cycle that's going on right now. We're like, dang, this is crazy. And then you just have like the third wheeler out there. He comes out, yeah, I dropped off a bear carcass in Central Park. It's like, what the hell is going on this year? Like, I don't know. Anyways.
And he did it so seriously too. He said, I left the bear in the park because I couldn't take it away, and I picked it up off the road. It was roadkill, and I figured I'm going to take it with me. It's like, dude, it's like, who the hell just goes and picks up a dead animal off the street, puts it in the trunk of their car with their carpet getting all messed up by the blood, and then decides out of the blue, I'm going to go dump it in Central Park and get my bicycle out of the car, stage an accident, and then run away. And then later it's like a big scandal about who dumped the bear in Central Park. It's like, it's the presidential candidate that dumped the bear. It's like, what the hell's going on?
Yeah, and then he came out, dude, like he was revealing he's Batman. He was like, I'm Batman. It's like, bro, you dropped off a dead bear in a park in the biggest city in America. It's like, didn't you think that's kind of weird? Like Mr. Pooh Bear just walked out of his apartment on 9th and 10th and then walked into Central Park and got hit by a bike and died. It's like, who's going to believe this? Like, who's going to believe this?
Also, by the way, like when I do the guy's voice, I'm not mocking his like impediment or anything like that. I'm simply like replicating how he sounds. That's how he sounds if you ever heard him talk. So not trying to bash the guy for that or anything, but the bear story is certainly an odd one.
It's just adding to the list of crazy crap that is happening. But anyways, like, and of course I say that on a non-political level because some people are gonna be like, ha! Well, that other side, no, it's everyone. Like, if you just sit back and you just watch it like we do, it's everywhere, like the craziest, stupidest stuff. And you just watch it, and I just think, man, I wish I was 35 so that way I could run for president. But the honest truth is, I actually think this now. I probably would not be electable because I don't think I'm the kind of caliber of stupid these days people would vote for, really, to be honest with y'all. Like, y'all would vote for me, I know. But I don't think many people would. Because I would come out there and I would start talking about railway infrastructure or something I'd lose about everyone because I'm not out there dumping a bear carcass off in the park or something like that, you know. But anyways, moving on from that and down into Kherson, because we got really no other news from the Zaporizhzhia Donetsk front, we did get to see a couple of destroyed Urals down here in Kherson. And as the Russians drove by, they said, "You worms, bled!" The worms, they told me to jump the Ural off on the street, bled. Oh, that thing overturned. And with that, that's the end of the clip right there, but still really interesting to see. And moving on from that and further on down and into the area of Crimea, we also got to hear of a fire that was happening. And let me make sure that this loads so that way I can read this. The Yevpatory Air Base. I know I mispronounced that, but here's the clip.
Громко так. Ой-ой-ой. Страшно.
Did he just say drone attack in English?
I think he did. He was like, Dulski drone attack. It's like...
Громко так.
It sounds like it.
Ой-ой-ой.
That sound like almost like partially English.
Dude, you know what that sounded like, man? That almost sounded like Japanese. He was like, Darunataka. It's like, what the hell? It's like, yeah, that's weird. But anyways, moving on out of Crimea, it's now time for us to move all the way north to Kyiv to cover the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 895 of The Wire. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Speech. I don't want the subtitles. I want a real speech. Thank you.
Long-lasting speech.
І українці, українки провів сьогодні ставку. Кілька питань. Перше, це, звичайно, фронт. Доповідь головкома, він брав участь в ставці якраз з передової, безпосередньо перебуває там. Доповів щодо всіх напрямків наших дій, найбільш жорсткі – Покровський, Торецький, також Харківщина і всі інші напрямки боїв. Жодного не залишаємо без уваги, робимо максимум, щоб підтримати наші підрозділи та щоб знищувати окупанта. Дякую кожній нашій бойовій бригаді, усім солдатам та командирам, які всіма силами знищують ворога і, зокрема, влучно застосовують наші можливості щодо дронів. Наші українські сили оборони та безпеки у цьому вже йдуть до переваги, і за липень наші воїни застосували більше дронів, ніж окупант. Це має бути стійкою тенденцією на фронті по всіх видах дронів, які є у наших підрозділів, від FPV та до всіх інших, включно з нашими далекобійними дронами, які вже впливають на війну стратегічно, впливають в інтересах України. І наше українське лідерство щодо дронів може бути не лише тим фактором, який наближає справедливе закінчення війни, але й зробить Україну постачальником безпеки для інших держав. Сьогодні були також на ставці доповіді наших урядовців, Мінстратегпром, Мінцифра по виробництву та фінансуванню дронів. На цей рік вже законтрактовано нашими виробниками 1 мільйон дронів, буде загалом по року більше. Усі деталі зараз ми не розголошуємо, але наші спроможності виробляти дрони незмінно стають більшими. І ми працюємо не лише із державним фінансуванням, але й з партнерами, щоб вони вкладались у наше виробництво дронів, у те, що допомагає захищатись зараз нам, а згодом допомагатиме зберігати безпеку усім, хто цінує життя і хто зараз з нами пліч-опліч. Також сьогодні на ставці ухвалили рішення щодо нашої ракетної програми, збільшити фінансування, і окремо міністр оборони доповів щодо забезпечення зброєю наших бригад і відповідних перемовин з партнерами. Я вдячний усім в світі, хто дійсно готовий підтримувати нас саме так, як потрібно, щоб і в цей час, і в перспективі досягти результату. Перевага наших воїнів над окупантом – це те, чого ми всі разом можемо досягти. Всі, хто в Україні працює заради нашої незалежності. Всі у світі, хто дійсно цінує міжнародне право і хоче якнайшвидше досягти справжнього, тривалого та справедливого миру. Рішучість, сміливість та підтримка українців. Зараз дійсно сміливі рішення партнерів – це те, що гарантує, що у Росії не вийде нав'язати світові постійний хаос та війни замість нормального життя. Ще одне. Зараз у Харкові ще тривають рятувальні роботи після російського удару. Під завалами люди, робиться максимум, щоб їм допомогти. Станом на зараз відомо, що 12 людей постраждало, 1 людина, на жаль, загинула. Мої співчуття рідним та близьким. Всі необхідні сили для рятувальної операції задіяні і обов'язково Росії на це ми відповімо. Російський терор неминуче буде покараний. Я дякую всім світі, хто допомагає Україні це наближати. Слава Україні!
And
Herom Slava.
And with that, that's the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 895 of the war. And with that, we are now moving on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all. But before we do, I have to say a huge round of appreciation and thanks to all of y'all who have been watching this tonight. I mean, it's been crazy that so many people have actually ended up watching because, you know, like Matthew and me saw earlier, the stream wasn't even really getting pushed. Like, it's kind of the wildest part about this whole night. So the stream did not get pushed, like hardly at all from what we've been told. But nevertheless, we ended up getting 53,000 people who've watched this stream so far. And at the peak tonight, there was about 9,000 people here. I got to thank each and every one of y'all who have been watching so far for watching. Make sure to stick around. There's still a lot left. But what a night. I mean, that's been crazy, Matthew. We actually did not get pushed, and we still ended up bringing in top 100 levels amount of viewership somehow, some way.
I think it was just a really delayed notification because the notifications ultimately went out, but it didn't happen at the beginning, which was a huge glitch. But luckily, it looks like it fixed itself and it did go out because we sustained a very high concurrent viewership through the middle of the stream.
Yeah, I mean, it was crazy, but still, thank you everyone so far for watching tonight. Thank you everyone for being as dedicated as y'all are to this channel. There's not a lot of channels out there who have a community as incredibly kind and amazing and it really is dedicated as y'all are, and I got to thank y'all so much for that. A lot of people actually take shots at their own communities, which I think is really bizarre. Like, Matthew, you've seen that so many times, but what's crazy about y'all is, like, when I say that y'all are the kindest community I've seen, it's actually completely sincere. It's true. I just don't see communities out there like y'all. Like, I don't. Like, you see incredibly violent communities, incredibly stupid communities. Like, you know, like, I gotta say, I think my outset on how I'm saying things has been shaped by the course of this week, because there's been a lot that's happened in the background where we've had to end up dealing with some of the stupidest people I've ever seen. But still, beyond that, out of all those communities of truly stupid and ignorant people, the Lee Spring Army is not one of them. And I got to say that that is something that I'm wildly happy to know, wildly happy to see, and I love to know that y'all are as dedicated to this channel and watching it as I am dedicated to running it. And so, huge thanks to everyone who's been watching so far tonight. And without further ado, I'm not going to hold y'all up too much longer because we have another question that we've asked y'all about the Middle East, and we also have about 1 million questions that we have to answer, both in the Super Chats and the live chats. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so moving into our final question segment of the night, we have one more poll to address, and the question is, many U.S. troops were injured during an Iranian attack on an Iraqi base, and the question is, should the U.S. strike Iran as a result? 64% said yes, the USA should strike it right now, while 13% were unsure. Another 13% said absolutely not, we do not want another war in the Middle East, and 10% said, no, let's ignore it, it was only a minor attack. And also, just for everybody's information, the current reports on casualties are this. 7 U.S. personnel and 5 service members and 2 civilian contractors were injured in yesterday's rocket attack by Iran-backed forces. So our troops were injured. And also remember, we were told by the Pentagon that if this was to happen, then we would strike back with force. And right now, we're not seeing that. So it looks like there's no response, at least immediately, to these troops getting hit, which is a little bit disappointing in my opinion, because I'm not saying to go start a war with Iran, but we should at least strike the proxy forces to get even, because this is not setting a good precedent by sitting back and basically ignoring the attack. We're giving them permission to do it again. So I'm with the 64%. I think we should strike Iran's proxies, not necessarily Iran directly, like as in their country, but we should go strike Hezbollah or maybe Hamas to get even. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I believe that the United States should strike Iran as a retaliatory attack. Many people would say, why would you do that? That's going to get America in a war. We don't need to be nowhere. But those people are stupid. And those people don't really know how the world works either. The reality of the matter is that we are there. And we're not going to be leaving anytime soon. And everyone hates us anyways, whether we're there or not. And so I would say, considering that the Iranians wanted to attack the United States again and attack our citizens, we should teach them a little bit of a lesson. I would say that a pretty good lesson would be an Operation Praying Mantis 2.0, disabling the Iranian Navy, but also extending the operation to disable Iranian nuclear research and development sites near Isfahan inside of Iran and anywhere else they may be inside the country. I would say that that would be a fairly prompt measure. Not only would it hopefully completely slow or stop the Iranian nuclear development program, which is very close to being finished at this point, it would also once again disable the Iranian Navy, which would also give our Navy a very easy time achieving supremacy within the Persian Gulf if there was some form of a conflict that did begin, and it would once again send a message to Iran, much like it did back in the late 80s when Operation Praying Mantis was conducted, that they should back off. That would be the best measure, in my opinion, because not only is it looking out for American strategic interests, but it is also sending a message to America's adversaries and allies that they are not going to be able to mess around with us and keep on getting away with it, and America isn't going to be run by a bunch of weak-spined cowards that like to think that they're really strong, but they're not, and then they pose online with like a cigar in their mouth or something trying to look really cool, but in real life they're really just wimps. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, because I would say that the United States should strike Iran, at least in a limited form, to make sure to send them a message. We've done it before, and we can do it again. And I think we need to remind them that we can do it again. And so with that...
And also, when officials make statements talking about, we won't tolerate an attack on our bases. If that happens, it's going to be the utmost force. It's like, well, don't make statements like that if you're not willing to back it up, because all you're doing is you're degrading any sense of deterrence we had against the terrorist forces. And that's not productive. Why make the statement if you're not going to back it up? It makes no sense. It's just empty words.
I would agree with that. Also, by the way, really quickly, I got to say this because I'm seeing a lot of this in the chat. No politics. We have a rule about that. We do not pick a political side on this channel. Me personally, after having dealt with both of them this week, which is kind of why I'm really pessimistic on folks today, because I had to deal with really the rank and file of both sides. Over the course of this week, I'm not really a big fan of either side. And on top of that, I like to make sure that our news is as objective and neutral as it possibly can be. And so for that reason, we do not get into politics here. So if you don't like one group or you don't like the other, that's great. Go vote for the group you like in November when that comes around, but that's not the time and place on this channel. We're a pro-Western channel. We don't divide the channel on silly domestic political issues. We focus on a larger grand picture of ensuring American interests and strategic interests abroad, which is something that I believe that all Americans can get behind and agree upon, regardless of their domestic political standings. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion. And someone said, how do you talk about nuking me? Even the world's talking about nuking you. You're just coming up with that out of your head as straight fantasy. So with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so moving on from that poll right there, we addressed the one poll we had left. We're now moving back into our super chat segment, but real quick, let me close down that poll, and there we go. It is now shut down, and now we're moving on to our first super chat, which goes to GunFox61, who puts in a $50 donation. And a huge shout out to you, GunFox, for that support, and thank you very much, good sir, for that. And with that, he said, today in history, the 6th of August 1945, was the first time in history a nuclear bomb named Little Boy was used on the city of Hiroshima, and also Curiosity rover landed on Mars in 2012.
And thank you so much for the support, GunFox61. And that's true. The Curiosity rover did land on Mars on this day in 2012. We actually were big fans of the Curiosity rover growing up. It was like a very interesting thing, also because I believe parts of it, or most of it, was designed in the Redstone Arsenal up at Huntsville, which is a really cool fact about the Redstone Arsenal. It's kind of like a best-kept secret of the state of Alabama, but it actually has a lot of impact on the state. But another thing that was kind of a little bit bigger, in my opinion, is that the first first atomic bomb used in war was used on the city of Hiroshima. And this is something that always shocks people, because they always think that the city of Hiroshima is like a dead wasteland, like a Fallout movie or something like that. It's actually a thriving city these days. It completely rebuilt post-war, and now they have a little memorial site right where ground zero was for the atomic bomb, which blew up right about over this bridge, right about here. But we can actually drop down on that bridge, and I can show you what this looks like now. And so this is Hiroshima today. It doesn't look like it was nuked at all. In fact, honestly, it looks better after it was nuked than before, because now they have a pretty modern infrastructure inside of the city, and they didn't really have to tear down any of it to get it. Although I would have to say that 40,000 people getting obliterated in a hellfire might not be the best way to rebuild the city. Still, it doesn't look that bad.
Man, you said the place looked better after it was nuked. It's like, damn, that's a wild statement.
Dude, but if you saw Hiroshima beforehand, man, it was almost like it wasn't really that impressive. I mean, that's really the best way I can put it. I mean, the only concrete and steel construction building they had in the whole city was pretty much this one and the hospital that was a couple of blocks away. The hospital ended up getting demolished, and this building remained as a memorial to the bombing. But still, I mean, it wasn't really that impressive of a city before the bombing. I mean, I'm being completely objective saying that it actually does look a lot more modern and advanced post-World War II after they had to rebuild pretty much the entire city. But this park over here also serves as kind of like a memorial to all of those who did get killed in the bombing. Also, I believe, if I'm correct, that little clock tower thing right there with that ball, that's the exact height and area that the bomb exploded at, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. So
Wow, it was really that low? I thought it was a little higher up in the air when it actually exploded.
I think that clock is like 200 or 300 feet above the surface. I mean, it was an air burst, but it wasn't really an air burst. You know, like it was almost pretty much on the ground when it blew up. But still, I think that's exactly where it was, if I remember correctly. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was somewhere around there and at a specific height. But anyways, beyond that, Hiroshima is a pretty cool place, but nevertheless, that was probably the most significant moment in the history of the world, at least in modern history, because that moved us from the time of active, full-blown conventional wars, which were very devastating but did produce change, into an era where really no change would be made, at least on a nation-to-nation level, and you would have to try and tear down your enemy from the inside out, which people still do to this day. And sadly enough, a lot of Americans drink the Kool-Aid and further the propaganda objectives of the enemy, and are completely unaware of it and blissfully ignorant because they're just generally ignorant. But beyond that, I would have to say that it is probably one of the most significant points in modern history. I would say the bombing of Hiroshima was a very significant moment because it showed that the world was moving into the atomic or nuclear age. And the Treaty of Versailles was probably the next, well, really the most important thing, because the Treaty of Versailles laid out the groundwork for the Second World War. And not only that, it pretty much laid out the groundwork for the remainder of not only the 20th century, but really the 21st century as well. It's probably one of the most important treaties ever made in modern history, at least in my opinion. But with that, thank you so much once again for support, GunFox61. I hope that does address that incredibly well, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep this thing running, and we wouldn't be able to talk about cool and interesting rabbit holes like talking about Hiroshima. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, everyone's telling me that that clock is not the height that blew up at. It blew up about 2,000 feet above the surface.
I knew it. I knew it was higher than that because it was much higher because it had to have more, I guess you could, was it altitude, I guess, that when it blew up, so that way it had a larger impact.
I think, okay, so if I'm remembering the clock story correct, I think that was the exact area above ground where it blew up. I think, like, if I'm remembering that story correct, but that certainly is not 2,000 feet. Like, I think I got that part wrong. But I think that little clock tower is supposed to signify where the explosion actually happened. But anyways, moving on from that, thank you so much once again for support, GunFox61, and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope I was able to address it fairly well. And what are these? What are these, like, little yards? Dude, are they, like, all concrete? Like, hang on. I want to drop down on this because I'm really interested now. Like, are these concrete? You can't even drop down on them. Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, you can't drop down on them. Because I was like, are these concrete or are these sand? Like, what are they? Because this is a football field, like a European football field.
Oh, it's a soccer. Yeah, it's a soccer field, it looks like.
And then over here, they had tennis courts. And then they also had the wiffle ball thing. And over here, they had more tennis courts. It's like, what is this? Concrete? Sand? I can't really tell. I would assume it's probably concrete. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, GunFox61. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to James Alexander, who puts in a $50 donation as well. Huge shout out to you, James, for that support. We also had a 50 from Avir Anthony, and huge shout out to Avir. And then also, we had 2 more 50s. This one's from LSA Rocks, and the next one is from David Romano. So, huge shout out to James, Avir, LSA Rocks, and also David Romano for the very generous support. Each a $50 donation, by the way, which we're very appreciative for. And sadly, no comments to address on any of those. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to say a huge thanks to all 4 of y'all for the support. James, Alexander, Avir Anthony, LSA Rocks, and David Romano. Each of y'all threw in a 50, and each of y'all did not throw in a comment with y'all's super chat. But nevertheless, while y'all didn't throw in a comment on y'all's super chat, the impact of y'all's super chat is massive. Totaled all together, though, all 4 of those total up to being $200 worth of super chats, and they help us to be able to keep this running and help us to be able to do this as a job. I've got to thank you massively, all 4 of y'all massively, for helping this channel to keep on running and helping it to be possible. Because y'all help a very unique channel to stay on air and keep running. It's one that, after our experiences of this week, and I hate to keep on referencing that, but to be honest with y'all, the experiences of this week, it wasn't something where I'm going to go, welcome defenders, Enforcer here. I had to go to IHOP because I'm a little down. To be honest with y'all, it made me enraged, really. That's the best way I can explain it. Matthew can tell you that I've pretty much been going off about this all day today and yesterday. Just looking.
Man, you're not even the one that got beat down.
Yeah, I know, but just just having to deal with the stupidity of people out there. You know, like we run a very isolated kind of a bubble on this channel where people are sensible, people are rational, and people who are stupid generally get booted off pretty quickly. And so it's something else when you go out there and venture out into the world. And you see that the world is full, not really the world, but there's a group of people out there who are very angry, very unhappy, and they have nothing good to say, and they just live in absolute misery. And it's really something to see that out there. And to know that really every other channel is like that. Like, there's no channel like ours where we just try and be positive and say good things, and you know, pretty much, you know, try and make sure to be out there and say that the Western world is doing good. You know, we have something to be proud of, you know, and of course we're going to triumph over our adversaries and enemies in the world. You don't see that out there. And so I got to thank all 4 of y'all for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because y'all help to make this channel possible. It's a very unique voice on the internet. I don't really see many others like it. I haven't seen another like it, to be entirely honest. And I got to thank all 4 of y'all for supporting this channel and helping us to be able to keep doing this as a job, so that way we can keep coming on air and running the kind of unique channel that we have. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you to all 4 of y'all once again.
Yes, indeed. And moving on to our next super chat here, we have one from Nicholas Condor, who's also a channel legend, and he threw in a $50 support. And thank you very much, Nicholas, for that support. He said, do you think that the attack near Sumy could be an attempt to get the Russians out of their entrenchments and into a killing zone, like what happened near Vovchansk?
Maybe so, but the Russians really didn't do a lot of entrenching in places like Kursk and Belgrade. Interestingly enough, what we found out over the war is that Dragon's Teeth mean nothing. Minefields mean everything. Dragon's Teeth are pretty much useless, because the Kursk region did have a massive amount of Dragon's Teeth along the border, and the Ukrainians got through those, I think, in under like 20 to 30 minutes. The Russians have also done the same in some different areas of Ukraine. They've gotten through Dragon's Teeth in 20 to 30 minutes. What is the most dangerous thing in modern warfare? Are minefields, ones that have scattered anti-personnel and anti-tank mines. Those are wildly dangerous, and it's pretty much impossible to get through them without a massive amount of effort from sappers, and there's really no good way to try and clear them out, because pretty much the enemy is right on the other side most times. You really can't get them away without crossing the minefield and pushing them back. And crossing the minefield's impossible because the minefield's there. So then you have to try and find out a way to still clear it. And so minefields are really tough to deal with, really impossible to deal with. You can even go listen to General Schwarzkopf back in the 90s. He said that the minefields set up by the Iraqis were pretty much tough, if not impossible, to really deal with in any meaningful way. So pretty much made stalemate along the Kuwait border. But beyond that, I would have to say that it's wonderful to know that folks are really thinking hard and really trying to come up with an idea as to why the Russians would try and maybe, give up their defensive positions, I guess. They don't really have any. I was trying to figure out where my wordage was going there for a second. They don't really have any defensive positions in Sudza. They didn't set up any formidable minefields in this area. It was only Dragon's Teeth. The Dragon's Teeth have already been overcome. And at this point, there really is no defensive structures or elements that are behind those Dragon's Teeth. And so the border guards are just kind of running around like chickens with their heads cut off right now, and they're trying to figure out how to quickly make defensive positions for the small amount of forces they have, and also how to make defensive positions that would be strong enough they would be able to hold up against the Ukrainian forces that might advance onto them and overrun them. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I don't think that's what they're really trying to go for, because they pretty much overrun the defensive position, so the Russians are kind of out in the open at the moment. And I think it's more so to just try and draw more Russian strategic reserves away from other areas like Vovchansk and the Donbass, so that way they can hopefully have a little bit more decision-making room and flexibility with their forces in other regions of Ukraine for their commanders. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for support, Nicholas Condor. A very interesting question. I hope I was able to address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And our next super chat is going to go to Andy L., the longtime channel legend. And thank you very much, Andy, for the $50 support. And also, by the way, Andy was just saying in the live chat a moment ago, let me scroll back up to it. He said that, where'd it go? Where the hell did it go? Man, it's up here. He said, the good will seek the channel. No worries, we got your back. Thank you very much, Andy, for the kind words. And I will say, like I told you in the live chat, we have a very great community here, and it's been built into a very respectful community, which I'm super thankful for, because especially after dealing with nasty people elsewhere on YouTube and other places, you start realizing what we have here on this YouTube channel is actually very special and very unusual. And I think that's what really makes people gravitate toward it, is because it is like that. It's non-political, and it's also respectful. And pretty much every other YouTube channel promotes disrespect and also chaos, because that's the way they operate. But we're not like that. So hopefully the good will continue to seek out the channel, and it will gravitate people to it. But anyways, with that, Andy puts in a $50 donation, and thank you very much for the support.
Hey!
He said, I'm about 20 minutes behind, but what about the possibility that Ukraine is looking to take over parts of Russian territory in order to use it in future peace negotiations?
I would have to say the chances, at least with what we're seeing right now, are probably really slim. The Ukrainians don't have a lot of forces that we can tell are dedicated in this area. We are assuming at the moment on this channel, just based off of what we can tell, it's most likely a battalion-sized unit of maybe about 800 to 1,000 guys that have advanced towards Sudza from the Ukrainian armed forces. It's not really that heavily armed of a force either. It's most likely a mechanized, a combined arms mechanized battalion that we're seeing advancing, and we would assume that's combined arms because they have artillery and air support integrated into the battalion that is moving with them, so it would appear that it is some sort of a combined arms unit instead of just a mechanized battalion with only mechanized equipment in it. So it seems to be a very well-equipped unit, a very all-rounder kind of a unit, but they have no heavy armor to support further offensives against heavier resistance. It's really like a rapid advance force, maybe showing that there's more forces coming in behind them, but at the moment we haven't heard of those and we haven't really seen them yet. And not only that, they are quickly going to start losing the initiative here in this offensive. They have a very limited time to be able to rapidly advance before larger Russian reinforcements come in and start to stagnate their lines. And right now it seems that they advanced onto Sudza, or they're right outside of Sudza, and we haven't heard of any advances beyond that point. And they are now starting to lose that window where there's really no Russian forces in the area, and they're going to start arriving really soon, and they're going to start holding them back. So going off of that, it seems to me that they're probably going to just be trying to hold a small area given the size of the unit. So maybe the Sudza area and the surrounding region, probably all the way up north to Lebdevka, and maybe as far south as the area of Melovoy, and they're going to kind of control like a semicircle around this area. And then once the Russians advance onto them, they'll try and hold it for a while. They'll make sure to expend a lot of Russian manpower, probably with a pretty dogged defense for a couple of weeks. And then they'll, over the course of one night, probably withdraw all the way back across the border and give up the area. We're thinking it's most likely a diversion, because if they wanted to capture a large area of Russia, we would see a larger element that is trying to do this, maybe a brigade made up of about 10 battalions, and then each battalion would be conducting their own objectives along the border. But even then, the depth and the scope of their line wouldn't really be that big. They probably would require several brigades, maybe 4 or 5 brigades to capture a significant area of the region. And that would take a very big diversion of manpower they probably cannot afford at the moment because they're trying to hold the Russians elsewhere in Vovchansk, near Avdiivka, and also near Bakhmut. And the situations down there, while they're, of course, inflicting really high casualties, the Russians are making marginal advances at this point daily, really in the Avdiivka area. And so they're probably wanting to make sure to hold that area down so they really can't sacrifice a lot of units, like a whole load of brigades, into an offensive up there. And they also have to keep a strategic reserve as well to deal with any eventualities that they may not be seeing at this moment. And so I would assume they're probably not going to be wanting to take territory to exchange it. They're probably just trying to create some sort of a diversionary effort based off of the size of their force and the area that they've moved into, and also some of their basic actions at the moment. But a really good question, Andy L. And I thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I thank you for throwing in some kind words as well. And so with that, I thank you so much once again, and we are on to that next one.
All right. And also, I just want to bring y'all's attention to this real quick. I just saw here, it looks like there was a statement made by U.S. officials a short while ago that said Iran may back down from its position due to the American show of force in the region. That's an interesting statement because just earlier today, U.S. officials said that the odds of being able to talk Iran out of their current position is dwindling extremely fast, and it's basically zero. So at this point, I'm not really sure if people are simply getting quotes that are false or what, but there's really no telling of what's going to happen in the coming days. But to say that Iran's going to back down, considering the fact that we've already had assets in the region, is a little bit weird to me. But y'all let us know what y'all think in the live chat. Like, let us know. Do you think Iran is going to back down due to the massive show of force, or are they going to keep going? And Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say, well, a massive show of force last time didn't mean anything. Like, we had a massive show of force back then, it didn't mean anything. I would have to say that's probably just some kind of a weird background noise comment. I wouldn't really put too much into it because it's going against the grain of every other statement we've heard so far. So maybe if we start seeing that echoed a lot elsewhere from different sources, not like different sources as in like 6 different Twitter accounts quoting the same thing. Maybe we see multiple different people saying that here in the future. We might see that that's really the case, but for now I would say that's most likely an outlier and probably not the reality we're dealing with at the moment. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to David Romano, who puts in a $50 donation. And huge shout out to you, David, for that support. And sadly, no comment to address, but we appreciate that very much because it helps keep the lights on, the work running, and also the coffee stocked. And we appreciate it very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, David Romano, and helping this channel to keep on running. That is your second super chat of the night. You've thrown in $100 total, and I gotta thank you so much for the support. You didn't throw in comments, but the support does mean a lot, and it helps this channel to keep on running. And so a huge shout out and a big thanks to you once again, and thank you so much for enjoying the channel. That you'd find it worthwhile to support it and help us to stay on air. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And we've got a 25 from Charles Hazlett. And thank you very much, Charles. He said, the best news on the world flashpoints. And take one from the chat, please.
And thank you so much for the kind words, Charles Hazlett. We try to be the best on reporting the news. I'm so glad that we report the news the way we do. We try and make sure that everything is corroborated with picture and video evidence. We don't just say, trust me, bros, like everyone. And I'm glad that people really do enjoy that. We put loads of effort into trying to make sure that this channel is as accurate, as corroborated as it can be with its facts and its information. And I'm glad that a lot of people enjoy that. And I thank you so much, Charles Hazlett, for always being around with this channel, always watching, and always enjoying this channel, because if it wasn't for folks like you who really enjoyed the way we covered this news and wanted to support it and help it to keep on running, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible for the tens of thousands, really the hundreds of thousands of people who watch this thing every single day. And so thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, we need to grab that live chat. We got to get that live chat for Charles. And this live chat question right here goes to, let's see here. It's going to go to AF Kaplan, who says, how long do you think that the Kursk region offensive will last?
The Kursk region offensive, I would assume, will last about a month. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more, but it won't really be that long. They're just waiting for Russian forces to move into this area in larger numbers, get fixed in this area due to fighting and engaging the Ukrainian forces trying to push them back. And once the Russian forces are fixed, then the Ukrainians will probably launch something somewhere else inside of Ukraine itself. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat fairly well, at least in my opinion, on what it would look like. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again, Charles Hazlitt, for sponsoring that live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the next ones here are going to go to Stuart Sampson, who put in a $25 donation, and thank you very much, Stuart, for your support as well. And also, we had a 20 from Dixie LaFleur, and thank you very much, Dixie, as well. Huge shout out to the both of you for helping to keep the channel running. And Enforcer, what say you?
A huge shout out to Stuart and Dixie LaFleur for y'all's support. Y'all are incredible folks. Y'all been around for a pretty good while, and I got to thank y'all once again for supporting this channel and helping it to be possible, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible. We wouldn't be able to keep this thing running. We've had so many super chats tonight without comments. I'm saying like the same thing for each of them, but I really want y'all to know that we do appreciate them massively. Y'all help us to be able to make a living doing this thing, because, you know, of course, living ain't free. And I got to thank y'all greatly for enjoying the channel and wanting to help it to keep on running, because y'all really do make this thing a reality each and every day we're on air. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Oh.
And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, Enforcer, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, there was some lag there for a second. But anyways, I think we're back. But with that, we're moving on to our next Super Chat question. And this one goes to Wilness LSA Latvia, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Wilness, for that support as always. He said, for the Fly Swatter Fund.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support for the Fly Swatter Fund. Matthew's been swatting them bots tonight. Something horrific. I mean, the Wilderness, it's been crazy down there. I've seen maybe 70 bots get banned tonight. I mean, people just coming in saying that same stuff, those same stupid rhetorics and lines that you just hear, and it makes me sick because they're so stupid and illogical. Anyone with a brain could tear them apart, but the problem is no one really has a brain to tear them apart, so then they just keep going. And you know, it's something else. But I thank you so much for the support and supporting the Fly Swatter Fund. And I thank you so much once again for helping this channel to keep on running and helping it to be possible. But speaking of the Fly Swatter Fund, and speaking about a quick aside, Matthew, don't you love it when you hear like pro-Russian rhetoric, you know, like just pure pro-Russian rhetoric, you know, about like American isolationism or something along those lines. You know, it's just absolute defeatism, pretty much cowardice in the face of the enemy is what I would call it. And then on top of that, while they're saying that, you have pro-Ukraine people, you know, because the other side is pretty stupid with those talking points. But then you have pro-Ukraine people who are also so out of their minds or whatever, they can't even come up with good arguments against it. Like, you know, like, don't you love it when that happens?
Yeah, and it's really par for the course, because you really have to be thinking critically about stuff. You can't get so caught up. Like, for example, I support Ukraine 100%, but also at the same time, I look at the larger picture. You know, we have to look out for Western interests, and we can't get to the point where we're supporting Ukraine so much that we end up screwing the West over. So, you know, if you're just looking at it from a very narrow perspective, like, for example, I support Ukraine just because, it's like, that's really not going to lead you to any, you know, intellectual conversations. It's just basically going to lead you to, I believe this because I do, and if you say anything against it, then I'm going to fight you. So, you know, it's not very intelligent to take a position like that. And that's basically what I'm seeing with some of the people out there. Once they get questioned about, for example, by pro-Russian propagandists, why do you support Ukraine? They really don't have a very good reason for saying that, except for it's trendy or something like that. They really don't know why. But, you know, here, like y'all know in the live chat, we've said for a long time, we support Ukraine because, first of all, it's the right thing to do. They're a sovereign country that got wrongfully invaded by Russia. And number two, it's in Western interest to support them for reasons of NATO security. So, you know, we recognize that. Some people don't. I think that's a pretty big difference.
Man, but I absolutely, you know, one thing that I find so comical, man, you know, something that I find hilarious is that that one guy, Hot Dog Man, you know, he's pro-Ukraine. I mean, it just courses through his blood. He's pro-Ukrainian through and through. Nothing could ever make him question his loyalty to Ukraine, unless if someone's shitting on us. Now, if someone is shitting on us, they can't be a pro-Russian, but hey, at that point, screw Ukraine. It's all about hating on the enforcer. Man, it's like, that's when you know right there someone really isn't pro-Ukraine. They're just pro themselves. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. Thank you so much for once again for support, willingness, LSA Lobby, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat question is going to go to Purple Gerbil, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Purple Gerbil, for that support. He said, take one from the chat, and LSA forever.
An LSA forever, Purple Gerbil, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because it is folks like you who help to make it possible. So what do we got for a live chat, Matthew?
And this live chat question goes to Avari Mendebratis, who says, how are Ukrainian soldiers handling Russian civilians in the areas that they occupy?
We have not heard at the moment. They control such a small area at this time, and also there's not really a lot of footage flowing out. We can't really see how they're treating the civilians at this moment, and we also think a lot of them are trying to pack up and leave somehow, some way. So I hope that addresses that the best we can. We really don't have enough evidence or really information to be able to tell a clear picture on that, but I would assume that it's probably not that bad, but it's probably not that great either, because these are soldiers that are pretty like strung out. I mean, you know, they're in the middle of an offensive into enemy territory right now, which is something that the Ukrainians really don't do at all. I mean, they haven't conducted an offensive war into Russia ever. This is the first time a Ukrainian unit has ever done that. So I bet you they're pretty strung out, so they're probably not being as civil as possible, but they're probably not, you know, being war criminals either. But we don't really know for certain because we don't have a lot of video or picture evidence to confirm or deny that. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And I thank you so much once again for sponsoring a live chat and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Norman Austin, who puts in a $20 donation. Thank you very much, Norman, for that support. They said Taco Tuesday fun and keep on trucking, boys.
Hey, thank you so much for support, Norman Austin, and thank you for helping this channel to keep on running. Thank you for supporting the Taco Tuesday fun. We love Taco Tuesday, and we didn't have tacos today. I hate to say it. We actually had what was that thing, Matthew? It was like some kind of a chicken.
It was a chicken penne pasta, basically something. I don't know. It was a HelloFresh thing, and it was easy to make, and it was good. I don't know really what it was. I actually cooked it, but I have no idea what it was.
But man, that thing was busting. Like, it was so good. But we should have had a taco. We should have had a taco. It's Taco Tuesday. But still, thank you so much for the support, Norman Austin. We will keep on trucking. But of course, a big shout out to you and a thank you for wanting us to keep this channel running and supporting it so that way we can make it possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Uncle Sam's Misguided Child, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, Uncle Sam, and the Misguided Child. He said, donate for the truth in the press and freedom, and like and subscribe.
And thank you so much for the support, Uncle Sam's Misguided Child. And thank you so much for donating for truth in the press and freedom. Of course, this channel is pro-Western and pro-American, of course, because we're Americans, so we're primarily pro-American, but pro-Western overall. And for that reason, we are always pro-freedom, and we're always pro-democracy, and we're always pro-freedom of the press. But one thing I will say about that, a little bit of a caveat with that, is I wish the people who called themselves press were a little bit more involved with the actual getting out the press side of things instead of getting out their opinions, you know, because you got a lot of editorialism out there and a lot of stupid people, a lot of ignorant people really, who've decided that their voice is important, and instead of trying to actually cover the news and just inform people on what's going on out there, or at least try and paint the big picture of how it falls into place, a lot of people just like to put out dumb opinions and really have no basis backing or facts behind them to really make them stick. So I would wish that would change. Still, regardless, I guess it's just something that has to be a campaign that's spearheaded by the people who consume news, is to be more conscientious about the news they're consuming. And I would generally say that the best way to do that, you know, if I had to tell the Lee Spring Army what y'all should do if y'all wanted to see more non-political news, or news that is covered on politics but in a non-political way, is to simply just boycott any kind of a channel or any kind of an organization that has a political take or a spin. I mean, there are channels out there like ours who do not have a political opinion. In any channel, whether it be Fox, CNN, or a YouTube channel here on YouTube, just don't watch them. Like, if they ever say anything political, or they put out a political bias or a political comment, or they almost end up becoming a political commentary channel, just don't watch them. The lack of viewership alone will force them to change the way they covered news, and they will have to start covering it in a non-political way if they want to survive in that kind of a world. Really, that's the best way to try and change it. So I would have to say thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Uncle Sam's Misguided Child. And also make sure to press the like button and subscribe. Crazily enough, while hardly anyone got notified during the beginning of the stream, somehow we have gotten 3,300 likes on the stream, which is actually wildly high. It's insanely high. And I gotta say, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this, like hitting the like button, subscribing, and everyone who's super chat tonight, helping the channel to keep on running. All of y'all help to make this thing possible, and it's a wonderful thing. And also, before we move on to the next one, Viking Raiders said, "Is this a CIA channel?" No, but we have plenty of feds and CIA people who watch the show, so we always make sure to give them a little wink and a nod, because we respect the folks over at the CIA and also in the FBI and everyone else who watches. We all wouldn't believe it. There's actually a lot of them who watch. We have I think at this point we have at least 2 former directors of the CIA that watch this show, usually pretty regularly. One of them y'all will know, David Petraeus. He actually mentioned us in his book. He watches pretty regularly, and there's another one. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure who he is, but we've been told that there's another director of the CIA, a former one, that watches. And then we also have a whole bunch of people in the CIA that just watch, and every once in a while we get to hear about them, which is always fun, but we never get a paycheck from them. We just kind of get to cover the news for them. They get to watch. We're pro-Western, we're pro-American, they're pro-American, they're pro-Western, and so everyone gets along. But sadly, we don't work for the CIA.
We also have a good amount of like foreign diplomats that have followed us on Twitter and also found the stream through our Twitter accounts as well. I realized yesterday, I was like, who is this that followed us? It was like some diplomat in like Latvia or something like that. Then there was someone else who was in the, let's see, what was the other country? It was Estonia or something. What, you know the one I'm talking about? It was like the foreign minister.
Yeah, I think it was Estonia, yeah.
It was Estonia or some country. I think that might be incorrect, though. I don't think it was Estonia. It was something from somewhere else. But y'all be shocked, like the people that have actually watched the stream and they don't get involved in the live chat, actually, but they're following us on Twitter and they come over to the stream. You just don't see them in the live chat, but they are here watching.
Yeah, they're here. They're here watching at all times. We have a pretty, interestingly enough, we have like a pretty decent shield of like federal agents, pretty much, for the channel, which is always kind of weird. You know, like they just are out there doing their thing. But still pretty cool. Another cool group of folks that we actually have a lot of active service members who watch the show. We have, I personally have friends who are in the Space Force, and also some friends I kind of do and don't talk to that are in the other branches, the Army, the Marines. Matthew knows one guy that's in the Marines, but I don't think he talks to him that much because he's a little off. Look at that boiler.
Wait a minute, who?
You know who I'm talking about.
Oh, clown.
Yeah, that one. Let's see, who else do I... Well, actually, there's a lot of viewers of the channel who watch that are in the Army, in the Navy, in the Marines, and the Air Force that are actively serving right now. A decent amount of veterans here as well. I mean, there's a load of interesting people. And then we have folks who are from Hollywood that watch. I don't know of any specific actors who have watched the show, but I do know of some of their assistants some of their managers, assistants, stuff like that watch the show. We also have, let's see, who else? Oh, yeah, I mean, really, like, the list is endless. We could go on forever. There are race car drivers who watch. I mean, there's all kinds of people who watch this show. It's just wild sometimes to see who watches, but everyone watches. But to answer your question, no, we're not CIA. It wouldn't be cool if we were. I mean, we would probably get paid pretty decently at that point. It's like, we probably would. We probably wouldn't have to worry about our income ebbing and flowing like it sometimes does here on the channel. But that is what it is. We just get to do our own thing. We get to be pro-Western. And on top of that, considering we're not in the CIA, we kind of get to have our own voice and kind of set our own path. But apparently a lot of CIA people do agree with the path we take, which lets me know we're taking the right one. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Butchie777, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Butchie, and it's good to see you very much once again. And said, I love you guys and so much respect for reporting the news how it should be, and I wish I could support more, but I had to replace my pickup a couple of months ago. And please take a beautiful, succulent live chat question. LSA, slaw.
And Slava Ukraine, and long live the Lee Spring Army. And I also got to say, thank you so much for the support, Butchie777. You don't have to support any more than you do. $1 would be a massive thing to us. We would thank you for $1. Like $1 and $500 are the same thing to us because it shows that someone enjoys this channel. They wanted to keep on running, and some people can support a lot, and some people can't support a lot. Sometimes it's really just the thought that counts behind support every once in a while. That really does count. And I got to thank you so much, Butchie777, for wanting to support the channel at all. No one has to, and I say that so many times, but that is the honest truth. No one has to support this channel. Everyone can sit back and just watch, but folks do, and y'all are the ones who help us to make this a job. And I got to thank you massively once again for helping us to keep this thing running, helping us to make this thing possible, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't be able to do this thing. And also, I hope that you got a nice pickup truck as a replacement there. And so with that, we will make sure to grab a live chat in your honor. And what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this live chat question is going to go to Angel Hernandez, who says, do you think that Putin will attack Ukraine with a nuclear weapon because of the border incursion near Kursk?
I would doubt it. The border incursion is minor. It's not an existential threat to the state, and it's just not really that serious of a situation at the moment to require a nuke. So I would highly doubt it. Me personally, I feel like if the nuclear power plant at Kursk, right up here, is put in jeopardy, that might become a reality. But for now, I would say that's very far out of the picture. It would be highly unlikely given the current scenario we're looking at. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Butchie777 is sponsoring a live chat. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Andy L yet again. He throws in another super chat, this time a $20 donation, and without a comment. And once again, huge shout out to you, Andy, for that support. And also, huge shout out to Natasha Millman for putting in a 10 as well. And thank you very much to Andy and Natasha for leaving that kind support. What say you?
And I got to thank Andy L and Natasha Millman for the support, and both of y'all helping this channel to keep on running. Y'all support makes this thing possible, helps us keep this thing rolling, and if it wasn't for the two of y'all, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing running day in and day out. And so, a massive thanks to both of y'all once again. A huge thank you. And of course, I got to give a big shout out to Andy L and Natasha for having been here for quite a while now and enjoying the channel greatly. I usually see Andy L a lot in the live chat. Natasha, I see you a pretty good bit in the live chat as well, and I got to thank both of y'all once again. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Will Callahan, who puts in a 15 and says, I've been watching Enforcer since you had 5,000 subs, and now you're at 247,000. And congrats. And indeed, we did hit that today. That was very tremendous. And he said, a fun quiz. Name a military item that is both plural and singular. And I'm not thinking of cannon or ordnance.
That's a good one. I actually would not know, Will Callaghan, off the top of my head, an answer to that question. I'm sure once you say it, I'll be like, damn it, I should have known. But I just don't know it at the moment.
Artillery.
That's a pretty good one. Troop. I mean, you know, like the troop could be plural and singular.
I think you have to add an S to make it plural. You have to add an S.
Well, no, I don't think you have to have an S. Like you could just say the troop. You know, like, you know, as in a plural.
That's a singular troop.
Hang on.
That's a singular one.
Hang on, we'll pull it up. Oh, no, I was right. Troop. According to the Oxford Dictionary, soldiers or armed forces. It is singular.
But in the example, it says UN peacekeeping troops. It has an S on the end of it.
Hang on. A group of soldiers, especially a cavalry unit commanded by a captain or an airborne unit. So it is.
That's a verb.
Yeah, but still. Well, I mean, they said a noun, right?
Yes, a noun.
They said name a military item. They didn't say a noun. They didn't say a noun,
man. A troop is not an item.
Okay, let me see.
Let's see. Man, I got you again.
Hold up. Let's see. So a group of soldiers, a cavalry unit corresponding to an infantry company, troops plural, armed forces, soldiers. So a troop can be a cavalry unit, and a cavalry unit is made up of multiple people, multiple troops in the cavalry troop. So it is something that is multiple. And Michael McMahon said cavalry troop, so it is correct. And so good to know. I got it right, man. I did it. I got one. And then we got apparently Troop, which is an R&B group. I've never heard of them, but still. Moving on from that, I hope I was able to get that right a little bit, Will Callaghan. And also, thank you so much once again for having been here for so long. You were here when we were at 5,000 subscribers, 500 cigarettes. And let me go really quickly, and let me go see where that was. I'm actually going to take y'all on this journey with me. So, let's go to the past 90 days, past 365 days, and then the lifetime. So, if you were here at 5,000 subs, you would have been here on March 5th. Yep, March 5th. That would have been the day that you were here. Was the 5th of March of 2022. That means that you've been with this channel for about 2.5 years at this point. That is so weird to think, Will. You've been here pretty much every day, too, and it's been nearly 2.5 years. Well, that's wild, really. Like, when you think about it, Matthew, people have been with this channel for 2.5 years. Like a baby was born on that day, and that baby is talking and walking right now at this point in time. It's like, that is really weird. Like, when you really think about that kind of thing, like how much time has passed since we started doing this, and it's just weird. It's really weird because it never feels like that much time has actually passed, and yet it has. I mean, like, people are growing up while we're running the show. But still, thank you so much.
What's also crazy is it looks like we had two like major spikes at some point. I think I remember what the spikes were. The first one was obviously when you first started streaming. The second one, I believe, was the Kerch Bridge explosion or something like that. And then the third one was the Israel situation that we recently streamed about, the last attack.
Yeah, it was. I think those were it, and I think one of them was also when we brought on our first guest. A time in the channel's history that will never come around again is having a guest on our actual live show. But back in the day when we had our first guest, we got a good amount of subscribers from that show. But yeah, and like it's interesting to see like the specific spikes. The biggest one that we actually ever had. Let me see. Let me bring this back on stream. I'll show you all this really quickly. The biggest one that we ever had. So. The first spike was right here on the 27th actually. We went from 103 subscribers to 1.7. So we gained 1.6 thousand subscribers in one day. Well, I say we, Matthew wasn't even around yet. Like that was just me. I was on my own that day. And then I got a co-host like a few days later. That was the first co-host. They lasted until about the end of March. Then Matthew took over, and then Matthew's been here ever since. This first spike was the first guest that was brought on. This spike right here, I forgot. No, that was the Wagner coup, Matthew. This was the Wagner coup right here where this.
Oh,
this
yeah. That was the Wagner coup. I remember that now.
Yeah, and then we climbed. I don't think the Kerch Bridge really produced like a meaningful bump. And then this right here was the beginning of the Dark Ages. So we went from 160 down to 156. And then we climbed back out of that. And then on my birthday, on the 15th of February, we literally on that day climbed out of the Dark Ages and back into the Golden Age of the channel. So we went from 160,000 subscribers on the 15th of February of 2024 all the way up until today, about 6 months later, about a half year later. We're almost 90,000 subscribers above that mark. The biggest.
So you see that on February 1st, 2024 is the first day of the first month that we actually had ended our time in law school and jumped full-time into YouTube. So at February 1st and that point forward, we were full-time, and look at the growth that's been had since then.
Man, I remember, man, at this point, let's see here. Let me see. It was at this point right here, I think. Well, no, it was a few days before that. I think it was like early January. You tried to focus entirely on law school. And so you're like, I got to go focus. And so at that point, the channel was still dropping. And then that was the lowest it got on the 10th of January. And then I started trying to brawl to get this thing back out of the hole. And so it got up to 157,474. So there had been about a 1,000 subscriber gain over like a whole month, pretty much, which is like nothing in the big picture, but it was still progress. And then Matthew came back on the 1st of February, and then we ran the channel, and then it finally got back into the golden ages, and then it went all the way up to where it is today. But this massive one here, which we gained like Geez, it was like 13,000 subscribers in a day. That was when we were covering the attack that Iran launched on Israel. We gained 13,000 subscribers on that live stream, and that was also the only live stream in the history of the channel where we got 1 million views. It was split in two, though, because the power went out literally in the middle of the show. Like, no joke, like, the power just went out in our area, and so it finally came back on, like, a few minutes later. We started another show, and so combined, both of them got 1 million views. So that was our only and first 1 million view live stream, which is, like, one hell of an accomplishment.
Crazy.
Not a lot of people run a 1 million view live stream. And then since then, everything else has really been our YouTube videos, and our live streams a little bit, gaining most of the other subscribers, but...
Mark my words, though. Like, I'm not. Also, by the way, I'm not hoping for war or anything like that. But if war does break out and we hold our live stream during the next Israel attack, I guarantee you it'll probably be over 1 million views, like guaranteed on that live stream. It's probably gonna be larger than the first one.
It probably will be, and so, you know, hopefully that does not happen. To be entirely honest with y'all, I'm rather fine with like a slow grind at this point. Like, you
Me
know, a war versus a slow grind. I'd rather have a slow grind. But if a war does start, we will be covering it. We will probably, if we haven't already hopped over 250 by that point, we probably will be well over 250 by the end of that stream. So we'll have to see how that goes. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, Will Callaghan, for reminding us of the old days. And I hope I was able to get the question of that quiz correct as well. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
All right, and jumping into our next super chat, we have a $16 donation from Duncan VR, the channel legend, and thank you very much, Duncan, for that support as always. He said, Papa Moo, when is Ukraine getting F-35s? Oh my goodness, F-35s? Ooh. He said, meow woof, or get them some of them Lockheed SR-71s. I'd be in favor of that. He said, what sound does a headless chicken make, Matt? The same sound a hot dog man makes. Also, let's see here. Boy, let's bring out Alan. Meow woof, quack, moo moo.
All right, we gotta get Alan. We gotta get Alan tomorrow, man. I've been waiting for this moment all night long. You know why, Matthew? You know why? Oh man. Oh man. Oh, hello there.
Oh, hello there, Governor. He said, what sound does the hot dog man make? It goes to something like a moaning, like, oh, man, I wish I had some more live viewers. Oh, man, I wish I had gone over to a fellow stream that was pro-Russian and made a fool out of myself. I sat there the whole time. Wait a minute, I'm doing it. Show the fly real quick. Oh, man, I went over to that pro-Russian stream. I begged to come on there. I said, please let me on, you pro-Russian, please. I went over there. He said, we'll be friends. Come online. And then he slammed me. He ambushed me. He said, why are you so stupid? And I went silent. I was too scared to speak. I barely muttered out, you make no sense, man. And then he punked me, and that was all she wrote.
You know, wait a minute. Better yet, Matthew. Better yet, Hot Dog Man gets kicked off of the show, disrespect, shit on, literally. And then he gets kicked off, and he tries to sound like a big man. So he goes, "Wow, he blocks me." It's just voice is shaking and shivering, and he's so scared. Oh man,
he did get punked though on that show. Like he got punked very badly. I saw that coming from a mile away too. Like he was so blinded by his hatred for us and trying to get on there, because this guy had bashed me really badly in the live chat. He had said some really nasty remarks because apparently he had seen us before and he hated us because we're supporting Ukraine and he's a non-Ukraine supporter. So, you know, Mercado was like, oh, let me go on there on his show and stuff like that and try to get one over on the enforcers. He went on there. He got punked out so bad by that guy who literally ambushed him because he hates Ukraine. And he went on there and just absolutely jumped all over Hot Dog Man. And Hot Dog Man was too scared to speak. The whole time this guy was rampaging, he was sitting there all meek and quiet. And remember, this is the same guy that said he was going to rearrange our jaws. He's sitting there not able to speak, scared to death. And then finally, the guy kicks him off the show, and he acts all tough with his face turning red on his own stream. The dude's like face was red as a tomato.
Teary-eyed and everything.
Teary-eyed and everything. It's like, this is the guy that was threatening to come and do stuff to us in our home state, in our home. And he's barely able to speak when someone confronts him. It's like, come on now. It's like, you couldn't have embarrassed yourself worse.
I mean, dude, oh my lord. But you know what was even better? What was even better is, like I was saying earlier, this hot dog man guy, he's like, oh man, I'm pro-Ukraine because it's the righteous thing. I would never become friends with a pro-Russian bastard. Wait a minute, did you say you hate the enforcer too? Oh my god, we have to be friends. Forget Ukraine. It's all about hating on the enforcers. Like, that tells you everything about that piece of scum, is that it has nothing to do with actual objectives or goals in the world. It just has to do with benefiting themselves in the short run. Even if they have to ally themselves with who they claim as their sworn enemy, they will do it just because they hate us. And that tells you everything you need to know about them. It has nothing to do with Ukraine. It's everything about them. But another thing is that the way that guy got kicked off air, and the way that he was like, he was just so weak during the whole thing, low energy. This guy was shitting on him to his face. He wouldn't even say anything. He got shit on.
He called him stupid to his face. He called him stupid. He didn't say a word in response.
Yeah, and so does all this rude shit, all right? And then kicks him off air. And the best that this guy could come up with is shit talking the guy after he's off air. It's like, why not say it to his face? So I have come up with something new for hot dog people, like hot dog man and his people. Y'all know how there's like little import like stickers on stuff like made in China, made in USA. I came up with one for hot dog man and his community, and I think we're going to have to run with this from now on. It's going to be the only curse word we ever allow in the chat. We have a new import sticker for them. Bitch made. Put a bitch and then a dash and then made. And that's going to be their import sticker from now on. So if you see Hot Dog Man or his people anywhere, just put bitch made in the chat, because that's where it was made. It was made in the land of bitch, because that's the only kind of a weak spine person can threaten us over email and then get on a stream and then become a coward while they're live on air. I mean, that is weak. And so I would have to say that's going to be the trademark patent from here forward. That's the only one we're going to allow. But I think that's a pretty fair one, because if you're that weak and you're that sad, like you deserve that kind of an import sticker. I'd also give it.
He didn't even have to go berserk. Like, you know, when you're dealing with someone who's a pro-Russian, like one of Putin's useful idiots, you don't have to go off the rails, like start cussing and acting like a lunatic just because the guy is spewing lies. You can simply respond very calmly and just say, well, wait a minute. Where's your proof for that? He couldn't even muster up the strength to even say that. He was like sitting there. You could tell like he had a bubble in his throat and could barely talk. He was just sitting there the whole time, just staring mindlessly at the screen, thinking, oh my God, I've been ambushed. I got to run. And you could just tell that look was all over his face. And it's like, he even admitted that later, like on his stream tonight or something like that. I watched it for a second. He admitted, he said, I was so caught off guard by that. I didn't know how to react. It's like, yeah, that's pretty obvious, bud. You got on there and got punked by some guy that's a lunatic. It's like, come on, man. That's why you can't act tough and go running around to people's shows if you're not going to stand up for yourself.
And another thing though, is that the other guy also could deserve that import sticker too, because this guy bashes everyone. I mean, runs his mouth like a clown. Like there's also another thing that I gotta say. This guy is got to be one of the most room temperature IQ people out there. Okay, because Matthew, I didn't know about this until after the fact, but Matthew had apparently been watching this guy's stream because he heard that someone else was on there as a guest. And so Matthew puts in some very neutral, of course, on-brand kind of comments, you know, like we would make on our stream to each other. And so this guy immediately goes, oh, that's that damn enforcer with the voices, oh, son of a bitch, and then banned him just instantly, pretty much, out of the chat, like an absolute asshole, all right? Like, because, like, it's one thing if you get rude, then you get banned. But if you're just sitting there and, you know, and you pride yourself as a debate channel, and then someone comes in and they have a different opinion, that's a little stupid to ban them off the bat. So then Matthew blocks them on Twitter, and then they want to cry about being blocked. Oh, look, they blocked me. Look at this. They're damn communists and not into that free speech. It's like, you son of a bitch, you banned my brother first. It's like, what the hell are you talking about? It like that was,
man, he got some licks in good on me though. Like, I'll admit, like the lunatic, like he had it, like obviously the bully pulpit because he's the one running the stream, so I had no way to respond to anything. But he knew who I was immediately when I said something in the live chat, and immediately started getting nasty and hostile right off the bat. And I was like, whoa, what the hell is going on with this? And I realized, oh, he mentioned like something about our voices we do on the stream. And that's when I realized, oh, okay, this guy's seen us before. And somehow he knows who we are. So I'm like, I guess I'm somewhat honored, but this lunatic's going off. And then at the same time, the pro-Ukrainian people who are allegedly pro-Ukrainian are just sitting there the whole time while this guy's ripping them a new one and ripping me a new one. This pro-Russian guy is. And they're just sitting there silent, not saying a word, just like the cowards they are. It's like, this is why you should not go on other people's shows unless you're willing to stand up for yourself. You're just going to make yourself look like a fool and literally make the whole cause look like a fool as well when someone punks you.
Oh yeah, man. Oh my lord. But you know what? You know what's even better, man, is that at the end of that all, apparently this guy gets so much backlash from the whole pro-Ukraine community. You know, and he's such a truth-finding fact seeker. He takes down everything. And then he blocks us on Twitter. So he takes down both of his streams, the interview with the hot dog man and the other guy. And then he just blocks us too. It's like, wait a minute, I thought you were all for free speech and a go-getter. Apparently the heat got too hot in the kitchen. You couldn't handle it, so you just literally try and erase all existence of the stuff. And then also what's even better, the drama gets even hotter because Hot Dog Man then puts up his own version of the thing on his channel, and then the other guy comes and copyright strikes him for it. Okay, there is some validity to copyright strikes out there in some certain situations, but when someone has their own recording, so what?
Don't go into that.
Okay, well, anyways, the drama gets juicier. It gets way better, and it's something that I just get a laugh out of, and also I get a laugh out of it because it's a step below what we do, because we don't put politics into our show. We remain apolitical, so we don't pick a side. And I'll be honest with you, I don't want to pick a side. But one thing that is really interesting, and it's just very fun. Like it's so. Oh yeah, I wasn't going there, Matthew. I just read that.
I was just making sure you don't want to give anybody any hints or anything like that. We want him to get stuck right where he's at.
Yeah, but you know, I was, anyways, that water's under the bridge. But beyond that, what is so funny about this, all right, is that I sit there and I tell y'all, I don't get into politics because politics is a goofy world. It's for goofy people. Like I don't mean like if y'all vote and y'all have y'all's own political opinions. That isn't goofy. But people who get into political commentary on YouTube usually are ignorant and pretty goofy. Like, I'll say that as a running rule. There are some very intelligent people out there who are into politics, but those people are usually intelligent enough to not run their mouths on YouTube about it. They just kind of talk about it with friends and stuff. And so you have one political person from over there on the Hot Dog Man's side, and then you have the opposite kind of a political person on the other side. And what is great, okay, what is great, because we don't pick politics here on this channel. We just are pro-Western. That's the only thing that we'll pick a side on, is that we're pro-American and pro-Western. So anything that promotes those interests, in our opinion, we're for. And so what is crazy, y'all? I'll actually say what we've been labeled by both sides. We've been called by the one guy who bitched out Hot Dog Man a radical leftist, and then we've been called by Hot Dog Man MAGA. And so we have literally both sides of the coin here. We are getting pinned as both. And I think that we're doing a great job remaining as a non-political channel when we're literally getting called the extremes on both ends. I know we're doing our job really well at that point when no one can actually label this channel the same, like across the board. Like, so I know that we're doing a great job of that. So if anyone ever comes in and goes, oh, I know you're being biased, it's like, no, we're not, because we have like everyone from every political side saying we're the opposite of them, which means that we're doing well. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I had to include that though, Duncan VR. Of course, wonderful to see Alan the Marmot, and thank you for throwing in the animal noises, tradition of the stream. And I got to thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here. We wouldn't be able to run this show. We wouldn't be able to do what we do, which is very different than everything else out there. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and moving on to our next one here, we have a $30 super chat from Howard Turgell. And Howard Turgell is a channel legend. Thank you very much, Howard, for that $30 support. He said, taco time. I tell you what, It is Taco Tuesday, and sadly, we did not have the tacos like the enforcer mentioned.
Damn.
But I wish we did. Because talk of tacos and also me getting starving because it's almost 12:15 at night is really starting to get to me. I wish I had a couple of tacos at this point. Not from Taco Bell, though, because they always screw the order up every time. But
No, they don't.
some good homemade tacos. They screwed mine up every time, man. They made me mad.
Man, I go there, they're a real one with me, man. I'll be like, I want this and I want that, and they'll make it exactly the way I asked. Like, I'm always happy with them. But still, thank you for the
Man, I
support.
went there and ordered one time. I said, I want this and that and this and that. And they gave me the exact opposite of what I asked for. Like, every single thing was flipped out with something different. It's like, did I get someone's order? It's like, no, I didn't. I got this receipt and it showed it was mine. I was like, what the hell? They gave me the opposite of everything.
Dude, they're like, screw you, man. To like opposites your order. But still, thank you so much for the support, Howard Tergell. Thank you for supporting the Taco Time Fund. And I wish we had some today. But what Matthew cooked up was really good too. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that fairly well, incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Rubber Duck, who puts in a $10 donation. Thank you very much, Rubber Duck. They said, first time not seeing your live stream in my YouTube feed. And isn't that lovely, by the way?
Wonderful.
They said YouTube might be shadow banning you guys. And I don't think they were. I think it was simply a glitch, if I can speak properly tonight, because it looks like about 30 minutes into the stream, it looks like a notification went out, and then a lot of people flooded in. So, you know, I guess it was just a glitch, but I wish YouTube would fix that, because it's really depressing to start a stream and have little to no people watching it, and then later everybody floods in and wants to go back and find out what was said, and then they can't even watch the stream live. So I wish YouTube would get that fixed. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would wish they'd get that fixed too, because I mean, I will be honest with y'all. I thought we had fallen off tonight. Like in the first 20 minutes, I was like, what has happened? I was like, something bad has happened. And then everyone came in and we got up to 9,000 live viewers. And I was like, oh, okay, well, we're fine. And we really don't even know if we're still getting audited anymore or not. It looks to me, to be honest, Matthew, it looks to me it may have been over. It may have ended Saturday. Because usually with the audits, to explain that to y'all, they would report our live viewer number while we're live a lot lower than what it really is. So they would say while we're live, our peak was 6,000, and then the next day they would update it to be like 9,000 live viewers. So y'all would see on y'all's end on YouTube, the peak was 6,000, but the next day in the control room, when it really doesn't even matter anymore, we would see that the number was actually 9,000. And that happened for like 2 straight weeks. And now since Saturday, they aren't changing the number behind the scenes anymore, Matthew. It will be like 8.3 thousand live viewers when we're live, and then 3 days later, it still says it's 8.3 thousand. Like on Sunday night stream, when we got up to 11,000 live viewers, it still says 2 days later, which it would have updated by now if there was an audit going on, it would say that it was higher than that, but it's still 11,000. And so I think that they actually did stop the audit. So I think that tonight's number was actually accurate, getting up to 9, because the viewership's been 64.3 thousand, which seems really on par with the kind of live viewership we got. So luckily, I think the audit's over. We thought it was still going on when the stream went live, though, because the number was like insanely low. But I'm happy that folks are here, and I hate to hear that you didn't get the notification, though, Rubber Duck. I'm just glad that everyone did finally show up, but I wish YouTube would actually fix that, because considering that we run pretty much nothing but live streams, it's a bit of an issue when they don't run things accurately or properly for live streamers. And so with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also make sure you check your subscriptions as well, because apparently some people are getting unsubscribed. I've seen actually several longtime viewers say that, hey, I jumped on here today and realized I was unsubscribed. I don't know what was up with that. Probably another YouTube audit is probably what it is. They're going through and looking for clues that someone might be a bot, and they're mistaking real people for bots, apparently. I don't know really what's going on, but make sure you're subscribed, because some people are getting unsubscribed. But with that, we're jumping into our next super chat, which goes to Wyatt Logan, who puts in a 10. He said, hello, LSA and Enforcers. I made it through my first year in healthcare this month, and good for you, Wyatt.
Hey.
He said, I love the money, but it's so hard on the heart. And driving home in real life right now, oh, look, it's Christmas mom walking again. Oh, damn.
Oh, my goodness.
That went from very heartfelt to very interesting real quick.
Hang on, man. Wait, hang on. Shots fired! Shots fired! It's just like, damn, dude. It's like, that was rough. But still, thank you for the support, Wyatt Logan. And I be dipped, Wyatt. You threw in another Christmas bomb joke, and that one was brutal. Throwing out like thermonuclear bombs out there. But still, I gotta thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, Wyatt Logan, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. And I got to thank you so much once again for being here with us tonight, being here with the LSA. And also, if you're being honest, I can't tell if you're being honest now or that was just a build up to the joke about making it through your first year in healthcare. Congrats to you. That sounds like it's been one hell of a journey. I know that any kind of medical school of any sort is fairly difficult, and so I hope that that wasn't too difficult, and I hope that you're having fun with it. I'm sure the money's really good because the medical sector, from what I understand, is kind of understaffed at the moment. I think it still is, actually, even years after I heard that, but still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to CU Chulian343, who puts in a 10 and says, I think we should also consider the psychological side of this invasion as well. And over the last year, Zelenskyy has been striking Russian land in multiple ways, and I think he's trying to, quote-unquote, bring the war home.
Bring them home. But beyond that, I thank you for the support, Julian. And I would have to say, I think that may be a part of it. I don't think that's the entirety of it. I think there's actually multiple reasons why they would do this. There usually isn't just a singular one. But I would certainly agree with you. That would probably be a psychological element of this operation, is to make the Russian citizen rethink it's coming to them. And it's not just the Free Russian Army this time. It's the Ukrainian army actually conducting this ground offensive. So it really changes how this looks, even in the Russian mindset publicly. But still, I thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Very good and interesting point right there. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Robert Lemieux, who puts in a 10. He said, is it possible that Russia delivered tactical nukes to Iran?
It's possible, but it's highly unlikely, if not ever going to happen, because the Russians have never provided a nuclear weapon to Iran, and I don't think they ever will, because as easily as Iran would use that nuclear weapon against Israel and U.S.-backed nations in the area, they would easily turn around and use that against the Russians in the future, considering that ideologically, the Iranians do not align with the Russians either. It's more so of an alliance of convenience at the moment, more so than a true long-lasting alliance, or long-lasting peace. But still, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for support, Robert Lemieux, and I hope that does answer that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Michael McMahon, who puts in a $10 donation. And he says, do you think that it'll hit the fan before or right after the Olympics close?
Probably after the Olympics close. I don't really, I actually think that they're not really caring that much about the Olympics. To be honest, I hate to say this, I know many people may be watching the Olympics. I haven't watched a single second of it. I've seen memes about that one Turkish guy who was shooting the airsoft gun, you know, with like the glasses and everything. I've seen that meme a million times, but I actually haven't watched the Olympics myself because we've been doing so much behind the scenes. Like, hell, Matthew and me, we actually got out and went bowling yesterday. Like, it was like the first time we had gotten out in months, and it was really fun. So we've not really been watching the Olympics that much. I don't really consider it that big of a deal. Well, at least right now. Back in the day, I used to, but still, I would have to say it probably will happen after the closing ceremony, because I don't really think a lot of people are trying to timetable around that right now. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well, Michael McMahon. And also, someone said, and I guess Barry Badron said, "Who cares about the Olympics?" That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, the Olympics just, they don't really hit the way they used to anymore. They really haven't hit the right way since the 2012 London Olympics, because there's no more money to be had in the Olympics. Like, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the 2012 Summer Olympics in London was actually the first Olympics in history to lose money for the city and the country that hosted it. And since then, the Olympics has never made money. It's been hemorrhaging money in billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars every single year that they run one. And so not really a lot of cities and a lot of countries are like dying to have the Olympics show up, because it's not really like the economic boost that it used to be back in the day to really host the Olympics. And for that reason, a lot of advertisers, a lot of companies, and really a lot of countries aren't really that behind the Olympics anymore and really like promoting it or pushing it, because it's not really what it used to be in the glory days anymore, when it brought in a load of money for the people who were hosting it. It's like a money pit. And so no one's really that interested in, yeah, and so no one's really interested in promoting it anymore. And that's also when you get like blue guys on a platter of fruit going, "Sucko blue adishadu," and you go, "What the like what the hell is this?" But anyways, go ahead.
Like, really, no disrespect to the athletes in the Olympics or anything. I know they've been training a long time for it, but this year, like, just for everything, like the opening ceremony and some other controversies that have happened at the Olympics, it's really has been garbage this year. Like, if I'm being honest, it's been awful. Like, I hate to say that too because I want to like support the Olympics and stuff because that's like a international thing that brings people together. But this year it's just not really been good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's not that great. Like, and also on top of that, there's no real hype around anymore. Like I was saying, everyone's losing money in the Olympics now, so there's just not a lot of hype behind it. Also, some people, because I know everyone looks at everything politically these days, and I already see that happening in the chat. No, the Olympics isn't losing money because it's trying to push a certain political objective. No, it's not. It's losing money because the Olympics Commission is charging people exorbitantly high rates, and they're hardly giving them any money anymore to do anything. And so pretty much everyone has to cough up the money out of their own pockets, and then they don't ever recoup it, and that's why it's losing money. The Tokyo 2020 Olympics is actually the one that lost the most money, and I'm sure many of y'all know why, and it's because the Chinese whirlybird virus went around the world, and they didn't even get to hold it during 2020. I think it was held in like 2022 or something like that. So it literally just bombed. Like they made no money off that. It was the biggest loss in Olympic history. And so then Paris was like, "Oh, we'll take it," and then they're like, "We'll clean the Seine," and then they really didn't clean it because people are getting sick as hell who are swimming in that river. And also, it still looks like it's filled with poo-poo water, and it is. Like, so it's not really that clean. They didn't really achieve their objective. And then a whole bunch of Parisians got pissed off about some stuff, and they said that they were going to time their poop sessions together so that way all of the overwash would flow into the Seine, and then they'd make it crap-filled where the mayor couldn't swim in it. So
That's great.
Yeah, it was this whole thing. Like, if you can always count, Matthew, on someone to ruin the fun, you can always count on the Parisians. I mean, they killed Louis the 16th. They eat shit in the river. Like they just do whatever whenever they want just to piss people off. But you got to respect them for that. I mean, they got their values. They got their boundaries. I mean, damn it, they're going to do whatever they need to enforce those. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running.
And this one is going to go to Ed, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Ed. He said, "Yo, LSC, Irish Ed here." He said a few things on my mind. He said, "Grrr, Temple U. Glad you remembered it a few days ago. Today, though, grrr. Also, this is dedicated to BC Skyman. And also, if you have the time, live chat, please."
Grrr. But I got to thank you so much for the support, Irish Ed. Grrr. Temple U. Grrr. And I got to thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping you to keep on running. And I do remember, it takes me a second sometimes to remember some things, but I always remember everything that everyone tells me about themselves as much as I can. And I got to thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And thank you for dedicating that super chat to BC Scam. And he is a true legend of this channel through and through. And we always love to have him here. I think everyone loves to have BC Scam in here. He's like a rock of the channel. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we will make sure to grab that live chat. And so what do we have, Matthew?
All right. And also, by the way, folks, I see what y'all are saying about the Olympics in there. We can't get into that just because it gets, I think, slightly political, but several reasons why the Olympics have not been good this year, and y'all already know what I'm talking about. But anyways, jumping to that live chat question, this one goes to Mad Machine, who says, "How much territory and how long do you think the Free Russian Army intends to achieve?"
It's actually not the Free Russian Army. It's actually the Ukrainian army itself that pushed in. And I think they're just going to try and hold Sudza and create a distraction that will draw strategic reserves of the Russian army into that area, where they will then be fixed in place so that way Ukrainian commanders can do stuff elsewhere. That's what I'm thinking right now. And so I hope that does address that live chat fairly well. Thank you so much once again for support, Ed, and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Kenabai7XI, who puts in a $7 donation, and thank you very much for that support. They said YouTube didn't push the stream for me, and it usually always does. And that's those glitches. I'm telling you what, tonight was a spectacular glitch. One of the worst ones I've ever seen. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, son of a glitch. But beyond that, I got to thank you so much for the support, Kenabai7G, and I got to say, that is something that we heard a lot tonight. We heard that a load, and we could clearly see it, because usually we reach our peak about 30 to 35 minutes in. We actually reached our peak viewership tonight an hour and 20 minutes in, so we could clearly see that it wasn't getting pushed like it normally was. But if this is some sort of a test or a trial by YouTube with the whole audit and then not pushing the channel, I think they ought to be getting a pretty damn clear picture after playing around with the channel for about 2.5 to 3 weeks that our viewers are real, unlike other people's viewers, and they can stop auditing because they're actually real. Like, if the notifications aren't pushed out, people don't show up. If you audit and see how many viewers are real, they're all real. Like they've done these 2 tests. I would assume that tonight may have been a test as well, Matthew, to see, I wonder if we don't push out notifications, are these viewers going to show up or not? And they didn't, like, until the notification got pushed out, and then they showed up. So they're real. Like, I don't know how many other things YouTube could do to see that our viewers are real. I mean, all of y'all are real. We're real. Everything's real. So it's not like other channels where, you buy, like, all of your viewers and you get, like, 500,000 viewers a day, every day, even when the news is slow. That would be bizarre. Like, I wouldn't even know of any channel that does that, but still, we're not one of them. And I think YouTube might be figuring that out by this point, hopefully. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for support.
All right. And up next, huge shout out to Robert Johnson, who put in a 5, along with Jenna Tolles, who put in a 5 as well. Thank you very much to Robert and Jenna for that support. And also, while we're at it, huge shout out to John Hines and also VC Slim, who put in a 2 each. Huge shout out to you, Robert, Jenna, John, and VC for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank all of y'all. Robert Johnson, Jenna Tolles, he said it, and I did, but still, John Hines and VC Slim for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I got to give a huge shout out to each and every one of y'all. Y'all help this channel to be possible. Y'all help us to keep this thing running. And if it wasn't for folks like all of y'all, we wouldn't be able to be here right now. And so a huge shout out to each and every one of y'all once again. Huge thanks. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one is going to go to Neil Vizanon, who puts in a 5 and says, to help keep the lights on.
Hey, and thank you so much, Neil Vizanon, for the support and helping to keep those lights on. Hey! And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Peter North Left Testically, who puts in a 5 and says, thanks for covering the news, and take a question from the chat, please. Slava Ukrainian.
And Slava Ukrainian. And thank you so much for enjoying our news coverage. We try our best, and I hope that we were able to do our best tonight. And we will. What happened, Jack? But we will make sure to take a question. Oh my goodness, Matthew. It just hit me. Like, my esophagus exploded because it just hit me. It just hit me. Oh, you're those sons of bitches that do those voices. He's probably talking about this one because it's insulted him greatly. It just hit me. Because when I did the other one, I sat there and thought, wait a minute, people have been offended by this before, not knowing that we do this about everyone. And then it hit me, Matthew. They got offended because we did the other voice. Because, of course, only the other side of snowflakes. Not everyone is a snowflake until they are. And so, with that, I hope that does address that well. It just hit me why that person hated the channel, and now I know they're a snowflake. Like, that's now, because, and by the way, I just want to put this out there. When snowflake is a general term that I use for everyone, I know that it's used by one side against the other almost all the time, but generally everyone is a snowflake. Like, just putting that out there, that's my take. But anyways, and at least in the political field, like everyone is, they're all easily offended and really butthurt about everything, and then they want to act like if you respond to them naturally, like if they do something that's an asshole move, and then you go, hey, you're an asshole, and then they're like, oh, look at him, he's an asshole, and it's like, you're the, anyways, y'all get what I'm saying. I hope y'all do. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and we will make sure to take a question from the live chat. Peter Nort's Left Testically. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Flapjack, who says, do you think that the border incursion could be the Ukrainian army luring the Russian Air Force into a trap with their new F-16s?
Maybe they could. We know that the Russians are starting to drop fabs near the area of Sudzha right now. So maybe it's a trap, but at the same time, there would probably be a lot of Russian air defense that would be set up pretty quickly in that area, which would also pose a hazard for the F-16s. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for sponsoring that live chat.
Yes, indeed. And this one goes to Bruce Lee, who puts in a 5 and says, Ukraine sends a hollow triangle to be followed by a hollow square, circle, and X. Meanwhile, Russia stuck on Z. I think so. And he said, meanwhile, Russia stuck on Z and two group bliat LOC.
Two group. And I gotta say, thank you so much for the support. And I also gotta say, I like the PlayStation reference. Very, very good. Very, very interesting. I actually never used a PlayStation in my life, but I think that's what a PlayStation, like the button layout is. But still, thank you so much once again for support. Help this channel to keep it running. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and the Lee Spring Army will never die. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Paul DeSena, who puts in a 5. And so I just found this channel tonight, and nice job, fellas. And thank you very much, Paul, for the kind words. And we're glad to have you.
And we're glad to have you, Paul. I hope you've been enjoying the channel tonight. I thank you so much for the support and enjoying the work we do. We try our best. And I got to thank you once again for supporting this channel and helping to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing a reality. And so, huge thanks to you once again. And thank you for supporting us on the very first night you found us. And with that, we are on to the final super chat of the night, and then we're finally going to be able to get on into the live chat questions.
And this one goes to the Halodununundu, who puts in a $2 donation, and thank you very much for that support. And also, I think I butchered your name. I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure how to say it. Halodununundu. But thank you very much for that support. They said, enjoy your stream.
The dude, you turned into a car, man. You went the it's like, bro.
That's what you do when you can't say somebody's name. You say, can I please have Mr. Paul? And like, huh? Paul. Said they'll figure it out.
Do you turn into a hit and miss with like 2-stroke piston engine? Dude, you go, I need Jim, you know, something like that. It's like, bro, you good? It's like, you all right? But still, beyond that, thank you so much.
And then you gaslight them if they make an issue about it and say, I've got a speech impediment. Don't make fun of me.
Yeah, or better yet, oh, you're gonna make fun of my ears. Like that. But anyways, I gotta thank you so much once again, Halodunu, for the support. Thank you for enjoying our stream. We try our best, and I'm glad that we did our best. And so with that, thank you so much once again for your support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the live chat questions. Of course, I hate to say this is almost becoming a standard these days, but due to the time constraints of the stream, because we are now over time by about 7 minutes, we usually try and make our streams exactly 3.5 hours long. We will only be able to get the Morse code decoders of the stream and 3 live chats. And so, Matthew, what did the Morse code decoders of the stream have for us tonight?
So tonight we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J., Paul Schultz, and David Millsaps. They said the LSA core Morse code decipher is Russia getting invaded by Ukraine is the Uno reverse of the war. Let's see how it goes. LLT LSA. He said, not sure if I heard this one correctly.
That is the sound of money, and y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. That was actually the one. That is correct, and I gotta say, huge congratulations. Y'all have gotten that correct on the 895th day of the war, and that's pretty impressive right there. It really is, and I gotta give y'all a huge shout out once again for making that a reality. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this question right here is going to go to War City. That's like it's like the very violent version of Party City. They call them gonna call it War City.
Wait! Before you move on,
that's like Porky Pig.
like you know how cities have names like the Sunshine City or something. War City is the nickname of Detroit. Like they say War City or no Chicago. Better yet, Chicago is War City. But still, what did War City have to say?
So War City, they said the only thing that Ukraine has to do is put fear into the people in Russia, and then the people will turn on Putin. What do you think about that?
I would actually disagree a little bit, War City. Like, that's an interesting idea. It probably would work in most areas of the world. But one thing I've seen throughout the war is that the Russian people are very malleable and very easy to abuse, at least for the Russian government. They never really stand up for themselves, and if they do, they don't really stand up with enough of a backbone to actually protect themselves from reprisals from the Russian government. So I would actually say the Ukrainian government putting fear into the Russian citizenry, it doesn't really do much to possibly bring about a governmental change in Russia because the citizenry is too scared and too meek to really do much anything, really. At least most of them are. The partisans, though, are real ones, but they're kind of in a smaller minority of the Russian Federation's population. There's not a lot of partisans out there, really. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one is going to go to Frostbite Productions, who says, I have a live chat question here. Let's say that Russia is in fact arming Iran. Would this give Israel provocation to engage with Russia on their territory, or even defend Ukraine by sending troops?
You could try and do that, but it would probably be a little tough. They're really two separate conflicts. It's kind of like saying because America provides weapons to Ukraine, Russia has the right to strike American territory, which isn't really the case. Or, you know, for example, you know, because we do that, Russia has a right to send their troops wherever America may be at war, which we're not right now, and fight against us in that area. That wouldn't really be the case. It's a pretty hard thing to try and diplomatically justify that and try and draw the wars together into one. So I would say probably not. We probably see that the Israelis would just end up dealing with the Iranians on their own and not really deal a lot with the Russians. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, you know, and take that with a grain of salt. But with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is Peace with War. That's a little bit of war with a side of peace or a little bit of peace with a side of war. They said, will this be the new tactic? Small counteroffensives across the front, even within Russia.
I think so. I would be honest with you. I think the Free Russian Army was so heavily depleted in their last border excursion. That's why they're not in this one. And so I think that's why we're going to see that from here forward, the Ukrainian army is the one conducting the little excursion trips, the summer trips into Russia, instead of the Free Russian armies, because the Free Russian army may have been severely depleted to the point that they're not going to be combat effective anymore in that kind of a role. And it also may be that they didn't have the kind of equipment needed to be able to advance into Sudzha right now, because from what we know, the Free Russian army is largely like a light infantry force at best at this point, and are usually used around the area of Vovchansk right now. So with that, I hope that does address that question incredibly well. We have reached the end of tonight's stream, 3 hours and 41 minutes in flat. I got to thank every single one of y'all once again for watching. If y'all did enjoy, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We have gotten up to a whopping 247,420 turn up subscribers, and it is absolutely incredible to see that kind of a number, because that means that we are only about 2,500 subscribers away. It's really 2,583, something like that. But we're incredibly close to 250,000 subscribers, 250,000. Not a lot of YouTube channels make it there. I can't believe that we're that close. And to be honest with y'all, that is the magic number that in my head meant way back in the day that we would have actually made it. That's like the mark of a massive channel to me is 250,000 subscribers. And I feel like we're probably going to be reaching that around the time of this week. I got to thank all of y'all so much once again who have so far subscribed and been watching this channel for a very long time. Y'all have given us the kind of dedication, purpose, and reason to be able to run this news each and every day and have a audience of people who actually trust the news we put out and respected the work and dedication that we put into this and the endless amount of time, pretty much, well, literally not having taken a vacation in about 3 years to make sure that we can keep on covering the news of what's going on everywhere in the world. And so with that, a huge thank you to all of y'all once again for watching. We will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the news of the wars going on around the world. And with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And with that, thank you all once again for another great stream tonight. The LSA is what makes the stream great, and we are greatly appreciative for this great community that we have every single night. And with that, we'll see you all tomorrow on the next Nightly War News stream at 10 p.m. Eastern, and also midday as well for the next Short War Summary if we have enough news to cover. And also, we'll be checking out tomorrow to see if Iran decides to get glassed or are they going to back off. We'll probably see something happening tomorrow, and we'll be here to cover it. But with that, Slava Ukraine, Herom Slava, get some rest, and we'll see you tomorrow, and good night.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards